Clock, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, it's 8 o'clock and we'll, oh, we have somebody
There's
coming
the
in.
guy. There's the guy.
Oh, no, can you not get in?
Yeah, there's.
Oh. The door's unlocked. Gotcha. Hey, welcome to the regular school board meeting for the Granite Falls School District. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight we have with us Director Carey, Director Kincaid, Director Ledoux, and I am Director Beach, Dr. Middleton. Also with us tonight, and Kelly Freeman is here as well, so thank you.
How about our student? Is she?
Ava,
I haven't heard from
I
Ava.
haven't heard from her yet,
Okay.
but Melanie did text her directly, so Ava Arciniega may come in. All right. So next we have item 2A, board comments. Director Carey?
I'm doing a ton of talking tonight, so I'll just do all of that as part of talking
Okay,
later on.
all right. Director Kincaid?
I'm gonna keep my board comments a little bit short today, just because we have a lot to discuss tonight, but I did want to say something about one of our teachers who means the world to not only me, but our students and community, who has announced that she's battling breast cancer. And I want you guys to keep her in your thoughts. And if you are the praying sort in your prayers as she goes into surgery on Friday, she is a gem in our district. So I just want to keep her in our thoughts.
Director Ledoux?
Yeah, I had some comments, but I feel like a lot of them will be addressed as we, continue. We're doing, we have a lot of open discussion tonight. I just want to set the reminder again, this is kind of my motto, and it's my adopted motto now at this point that will continue, is make the outrageous ask. I said that either a board meeting or two ago. And so, like, for instance, I'm following up on Dr. Middleton's outrageous ask. I'm going to try to attend an upcoming PLC on either the 15th or the 22nd. Just to, and I'm excited to use that as an opportunity to learn more about how the educators are improving the district for the kids. So I'm excited about that, but once again, continue to make the outrageous ask, and then just reiterating the main things that I had from the last board meeting. Parents setting an example, right? Education is important. It really is. Educators, keep your eye on the outcome, right? The desired outcome is knowledge, not grades. So when we're having discussions with, parent teacher conferences, something along those lines, I know it's so easy to go back to, well, they've got an A in the class or this, that, or the other, but like, are they learning? Are they better? Right? Are they adapting better than when they first came in here? Administrators need to steer the ship, no matter how hard it's trying to veer off course, right? Reel that in, right? That is the role and the position there. And then the board continue and even challenge ourselves, right? To even, if we feel we're doing a great job, then let's do a greater job of being a liaison between the community and the district. So those are my overall comments. Once again, just the reminder, I feel like I'm just going to keep beating my head against a brick wall on making the outrageous ask. Our district needs to do so much with so little, and we can never afford to rest on our laurels. So.
Thank you.
Great.
Do you want, sorry, you said later. So I just have a few comments. This is my first time back since the beginning of December. So since I was last here, we met with, I want to thank Director Carey for setting up both with Senator Wagner and with Representative Eslick meetings to discuss the inequity that Granite Falls receives in funding. We did have a meeting. It was supposed to be 15 minutes. I think it went closer to 25 with Senator Wagner. And he wrote a Senate Bill 5713 in response to that meeting, which I thought was fantastic. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised to see that he did that. But we have basically 2 days to convince somebody to schedule it for a hearing, which doesn't give us a ton of time. In addition, Director Carey set up a meeting with Representative, am I saying it right? Eslick. And she said she was going to submit the same bill in the House and see if she could get it to go to the Education Committee with the intent of then having it, if it doesn't get a hearing in education by this Friday, then it dies. But if we can get it moved to the
Ways and means.
Ways and Means, thank you, then we have 2 more weeks to get that hearing scheduled. So we're hoping to get that done. I'll let Director Carey fill you in on, because he's been spearheading this, but I attended those meetings with Dr. Middleton, with Director Carey, and with the WASDA representative, and it was good to finally get those meetings. Unfortunately, it was so close to the end of the time that we can maybe, but at least this gets more public traction to notice the inequity here in Granite Falls. So thank you for that additional effort and the time to do that. So next we'll go to 3A Superintendent Report presented by Dr. Middleton.
Thank you and good evening. Here. I think we have a lot of various topics to talk about tonight, but I'm starting to put my report at the start of this, as you've noticed, just because we need to keep academics at the forefront. And so most of my report is on academics. And just this afternoon, I have really some words of encouragement and hope for our direction. Dr. Manns leads a team, professional learning team during the year where they bring administrators and some core teachers to the district office and talk about successes, struggles, plans for improvements. And I would say today is probably the most encouraged I've heard, because there's so much talk about improvement using data, PLCs. And so I think we're going to just see more and more, and we're going to reach a critical mass where that's the norm rather than the exception. But tonight, in keeping in the spirit of student learning, I want to talk about medical assessment real quickly. If you're like me, I go and get my checkup every year and meet with the doctor. They determine my health, or if I share any symptoms, then we talk about that. What could be the root cause of that? And it's not just a conversation. I mean, yes, I go in and he certainly has a metrics that he's going to follow in questioning me, but there's always much more to it. There's always a blood panel, and there's always talking about the history. And then, looking at the Middleton genes, we've got diabetes in our history, we've got colon cancer, and so additional tests and interventions and assessments are needed. And then his words to me last October, I might want to lose a little weight, Josh, and improve your diet. I don't disagree, but that was his assessment. Educational assessment, really very similar. We're taking empirical data, we're seeing where students are, where they're at, and then from there refining our programs. So we have, oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
Oh. Oh, thank you.
We have our state standard, which the state is expecting our teachers to deliver, to assess, and if students haven't accomplished that, then we need to do something different, a different way, assess it a different way. State standards are broken down to objectives that are the day-to-day lessons. Not all standards are treated equally. We have essential standards or power standards, which certainly don't take more time. They deserve more time, and oftentimes they are found on the state assessment. And the state assessments are tied to our state standards. So when it comes to diagnostic assessments, we assess multiple times throughout the year to find out what is the student's current learning base, knowledge base. We have 2 assessments that we give 3 times a year. We have iReady for K-8 and academic progress or MAP testing for 9 through 12. And these are tightly correlated to state standards. So how you do on iReady and MAP is going to be a predictor of how you're going to do on the state assessment. I think it's important. There are so many learning materials in iReady, especially. They're not curriculums though, but they provide a lot of supports and interventions. And when you go on to the website showing, if I'm a teacher and I've given iReady, I can show how my whole class did, and it'll be a bar graph. I hit that bar graph, it takes me down to the student level. And then on the student level, it'll show me what I can do, interventions or additional support for that student, and what areas they're strong in. You can look at it holistically. If my class is really missing fractions, I need to spend more time on that. So it's very student focused rather than teacher focused. So with student learning, of course, you always want to have data coming from different points, that triangulation. So going back to my medical analogy, I could just have this conversation. I could go in just like this, have a talk with my doctor. I could walk out and he says, yeah, I think Middleton, it looks okay. Seems healthy. But if there's not doing any diagnostic, they're not doing blood tests, if they're not doing any extra because of my genetic history, not some other metrics, and they certainly have a script that they follow. It's not just a conversation. They know exactly the questions to ask. They're going to get a much better read on my health. And the same way with education. We can have isolated teacher assessments, gut feelings, an occasional class assessment, or we can have teacher assessment plus common assessments that all the teachers in that grade band or that subject area are giving. We can have diagnostic tests and a state assessment. So which is going to give a truer sense of how our students are doing? Obviously, the latter. We need to have multiple points. We need to have that triangulation of data. This is the content. This is the PLC work. This is why they get together. It is about academics. When there's too much talk about operations, there's a problem. It needs to be focused on how our students are doing. And if we're not using these whens, these whys, at best, it's a missed opportunity. At worst, it's negligence. So I'm not going to go through all the iReady data. I have a packet that I'm sending you tomorrow with all of that information, but I just want to show a couple highlights. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no worries.
And I know this is really hard to see, but you'll get the concept, especially when you get it in your own hands. This is kindergarten. The first assessment was given in September, and we give it 3 times a year. And then we gave it again in January. Now, the questions are what we call leveled, meaning when it's given in September, the questions are designed for, they start with, okay, this is a brand new kindergartner, first year, first month of the school year. And then they become leveled. If I answer a question correctly, the question might get a little bit harder. If I miss it, it'll get a little bit easier. So in looking at these 3 bands, you have at the very top, those who are above grade level. And then the second in the lighter green, those who are at grade level. And then the yellow, Those who are not proficient, they're not at grade level. And so this is given again in September, and then in January, we gave the second set of assessments. And you can see there's a lot to celebrate for our kindergartners. And you might wonder, okay, why so much yellow at the start? Well, we don't know their background. Some are going to preschool, some are not. Some have maybe very rich home lives with lots of reading and lots of parent interaction. Some may not. So we're really pretty pleased with this growth. Now in May, we'll come back and we'll show a third chart and we'll have it all lined up and you will continue to see more and more green. Okay, so that's, and I'm just giving a couple examples. I'm not going through every, we do it for math and reading. This happens to be kindergarten math. Next one is I believe that's a fourth grade math also. So here we see last year's. Oh, sorry, this is first grade. So the first three are kindergarten. So fall, winter, and spring. And then it's the first year. So first grade. And so you might look and say, what happened between spring, where we see all that green, and then the start of first grade, where you see a whole lot more yellow and even a little bit of red? iReady and MAP, their questions are designed on the standards of that grade. So we're no longer assessing kindergarten standards, we're moving on to first grade. So we see, okay, summer has occurred, there's definitely some learning loss, and it's the first assessment of the year. And again, we can see a little bit of growth, you know, from that fall to winter. So when spring comes, hopefully that yellow has shrunk quite a bit, and the red is shrinking as well. But again, this is the work of the PLCs. This is what they're talking about in those meetings. What are we doing? Where are the weak points? What can we do differently? This is fifth grade, and this is reading. So you can see, I'm sorry, the ones on the left are fifth grade. The first three are fifth grade, and then the second two are sixth grade. And so you can see how they performed in fifth grade and now going over to sixth grade, but what their status is. And then if we go to our last example, this is a high school. We're looking at 9th grade to 10th grade. So the first three are the first three are 9th grade math, and then the last two are 10th grade math. I'm sorry, we're reading. First three are 9th grade reading, second two are 10th grade reading. So you'll see all of the data in what I prepare. The last thing I want to share, and then if you have some questions on this before we go to the next topic, we can discuss. This next slide, I think, really tells the story of why we have so much red and some yellow. This is attendance. Let's see where. Not sure this got added, so I'm just going to describe something that will be in your packet tomorrow. And that is, when we look at one of the culprits of lower test scores, it's attendance. Ideally, students would be in school 90 to 95% of the time. You won't have 100%. Kids get sick, kids go on field trips, kids go competition, so forth. So you're looking for at least 90% attendance. what you're going to see tomorrow on this graph is from all the way kindergarten, all the way to high school. We have less than 70% of our students in attendance 90% of the time. So I know that's numbers thrown at you, but if you really think about that, that means, again, less than 70% of all of our students are in school 90% of the time. That is an incredible amount of time. We should have 100% of students in attendance at least 90% of the time. So attendance has got to be an area we focus on. And this is where so I know we're talking about parent engagement tonight. This is the one message. We need kids in school. They cannot learn if they're not in attendance, attending our school. So again, I will get this out to you tomorrow and you'll be able to dissect through some of this. Are there some questions on this before we move to the next topic of my report? Let me, I think I might have one more slide here. That was,
Yes.
before we go to safety.
Board, do you have questions?
I'm sorry, I have one more slide and then, because I think this is key to all of our conversation. Our two questions, the questions I have for our administrators and teachers is, and I keep saying this is sort of my theme this year, sort of like your audacious question. My question is, if we want different results, what are we willing to do differently? Because we don't do something differently. Our instruction doesn't look differently. If we don't do different things in our PLCs, if our PLCs are all about operations rather than and learning, we're going to be in the same place. So this really is at the heart of our work. And school improvement work is hard work because not everyone agrees. Not everyone is on board, but it takes groups like this afternoon where you build a critical mass and it grows. So these two questions, along with attendance, we drill hard on those and we're going to be in good shape. Okay, I'm sorry. Madam Chair.
I apologize. I thought you were going to take questions. Board, do you have questions for Dr. Middleton?
High level, just from the data that you showed, I know it sounds like we'll get it and we'll be able to come through it. Just anecdotally, there was data present. It looks like the younger has moved much more freely in their improvements throughout the year. And then as you go down the line, even as early as 5th grade, and then in high school, that variation slows. It almost seems like there's a stuck in the ways mentality. Is that a fair assessment of what you've seen across?
Yeah, that can be, because I think it goes back to, are we doing anything? Are we doing any interventions? But I think it's also a matter of no, I'm sorry, just lost my thought on I'll come back.
No, yeah, and the reason why I ask is just because thinking through, as I'm looking at it, and obviously this is the job for the professionals here, but just working through the problem of solving and getting a kindergartner that moves into 1st grade up to grade level has very different actions behind it from getting a 5th grader that is, maybe the same level behind, but and it's keeping on top of that year over year, because what I'm seeing in the data at least is this growing split of, I'll look into it. The 9th grade data looked extremely alarming, that we went from fall to winter, there were even more people 2 or 3 grade levels behind. And I think it was math or English or one of them. So I'm curious to see how that all lines up. Kind of pontificating right now, but
I remember my point, and that was, yes, we want to see more green, but we want to see we want to see that red shrink, even if that yellow grows a little bit, or yellow grows a little bit.
Right.
Shrinking the red is big. So wherever we see greens, that's a plus. And that reminds me of the School Board Association article I sent you, because the bottom line in that whole article is, hey, you know what? 100% of students need to be gaining 1.5 years of gains, make those gains. And if that happens, you know, good things will happen. So, I mean, I know we're going to have school improvement reports over the next, 5 board meetings. But when I read that, it really just sort of struck home. That just needs to be the bottom line. We need to grow 1.5 years. Everybody needs to grow 1.5 years. And that means we need to do some different things in our classrooms.
You have a question, right?
No.
Thanks can everyone hear me? Sorry, I have the worst cold today. I'm gonna do a lot of coughing. That will help. Well, oh, that's great. I appreciate the information, Dr. Middleton, and obviously we're seeing it for the first time. So we'll go over it, and I'm sure I'll have deeper questions here in a second. I guess I wanted to ask, I know this may be a spoiler alert, but what anecdotally was the data overall, or the results better on this round of iReady data, or worse, or drips and drabs? Can you just give me points?
I think every grade can say there's some growth. Some it's a little bit slower than other.
Okay. And I don't know how deep we'll get into this in the middle school report, but I guess I would be interested to find out. So the information that you provided related to attendance, is that overall all grades? Because I remember pretty vividly, at least the high school having a goal to have at least, I think it was 90-something% attendance. And I thought I remember that they were tracking towards that. So that at least makes me think that maybe in the lower grades is where we're having these attendance issues. So I guess, have there been discussion or movement on, okay, well, obviously that's a trend that we need to change, but how in PLCs and in engaging parents for that student and giving them work to do at home, when those kids are that absent, we have this huge group of kids that are absent, how are we maintaining their education? How are we keeping them on par with their students? I'm guessing the likely answer is they're not, but I mean, that needs to be, is that being focused on and discussed in these PLC meetings and then kind of vigorously discussed?
Right. Could be a little bit longer answer, but we have something now called the data dashboard that gives us all sorts of data, pulling from all sorts of areas to one spot. And so today actually was one day I said, okay, we're looking at our scores. How does that correlate with our attendance? And so, we've known our attendance because we've spent more time on those who have missed over 10 days and even going to court to try and have interventions with the parents. But when you see it across the line, and high school is a little bit higher than the other schools, but one stat that's really stuck out was in kindergarten, we have less than 50%. So less than 50% of our kindergartners are there 90% of the time or more. So I'll be the first to say, for 3 years, we've been saying, you're sick, stay home. But this goes well beyond that.
Yeah, especially when you look at the required seat time that we have and how schedules are set up and all those things. So, I mean, I guess the question, and this isn't something I don't think you can answer now, but how are we communicating to parents? Hey, your student hasn't come, right? And what's happening? Is it a sickness or something? Or are we relying on text messages or electronic communication to do that? Or is someone going out and seeking out these students? Which is one of the things I think Crossroads does amazingly well. Those teachers, they will find you. So, and then also, how are we engaging students that are missing to make sure that they get caught back up? Like what interventions, what things are we doing and those type of things? I would love at another day to kind of dive into that discussion.
And I think another date would be, that would be good, because really looking at K-12 system with such low attendance, it needs to be district-wide. To answer your first question there very quickly is, by law, we need to reach out to families. They get a letter after 5, 10, 15 days, and then if there's chronic absences, we're required to have boards within a school, like attendance boards, and someone from the community is often sits on that board, and they'll meet with the parent and say, what are the barriers that are keeping your child from coming? So that is occurring, but just overall, because what about those who are just always missing 3 days here? There's no letter, another 3 days, a little bit longer. So all those little pockets of days add up. And so I think that's more of the culprit than the chronic, 25 days or something like that. So yes, we'll be back. And I really think it needs to be a big campaign for our town saying attendance does count and we need you here. So last part, unless there are other questions on this.
I'm gonna hold I have some questions that I've written down, but I'm gonna hold and see the rest of the presentation first.
I just had one more since we were talking about, so as we're looking and saying, obviously it's a pretty evident conclusion to say if you're not showing up, then that could be a reason why test scores are lower. Is there a way for us to validate that by seeing our testing data relative to attendance data? So like the people that are attending less than 90%, here are their test scores. Right. People that are attending more than 90%, here are their test scores.
There would be. We could.
Okay, so because I feel like if we could do that, then and break that down even by grade level,
right,
then we could see if there's, I mean, overall, it would be nice to see like, holy cow, do we have, now all of a sudden do numbers triple?
Right.
And then it's just like, okay, that's the method of attack. But if they jump up by like 1% or 2, then we're looking at more of like, okay, are we teaching, like, is it even when they are in class, like, are we getting the most out of it? So,
yep.
Okay.
So we have just the person to do that data crunch.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, we're ready for the next part there. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dan sent me the updated version, sorry.
All right, so, okay, so this is that attending, you can see, almost everyone is below 60%. Okay, each meeting I want to bring you a safety update, and I'm really sort of encouraged by a product that we had a demonstration with yesterday. This would be an application that would be on every staff member's phone, and if in the event of an emergency, a person could go on their phone, report it, and it goes out to whatever we set up the permissions for. And so I have just a 2-minute video I'd like to share with you. The best part of this is an extremely affordable, but highly, the benefits for this is great. So Corey, let's go ahead and do that.
What if you could prevent an emergency before it got out of control? How can you keep your entire organization connected and informed in case of a natural disaster or lockdown? Delayed communications can be too late for emergency teams to respond or for evacuations to happen in an orderly process. As an administrator for your organization, you are responsible for ensuring the safety of your employees, teams, students, or volunteers. That's why you need Emergent 3 to help you prevent, notify, and respond to emergencies. Our app gives you and your administration the power to act and respond immediately to any emergency, large or small. Customize the icons and names of each alert to meet your organizational needs, and choose to send alerts to only your internal teams or external first responders and emergency personnel. Whether you have mandated drills or want to keep safety protocols fresh in everyone's minds, Emergent 3 helps you properly plan before disaster strikes. All your alert histories are archived within the app, giving you access to critical information such as who started and ended the alert, who checked in, and the length of the emergency. This data will give you insights for annual drills, post-investigations, and lessons learned from actions taken. You can quickly generate reports and send them to all admin users. Additionally, the hierarchical abilities of the app allow you to approve and manage alerts within the branches, districts, departments, or divisions you have in your organization, allowing you to better manage resources and responses. You can quickly account for all personnel with our list or map view. The map allows you to view who is in each room and if that room is deemed safe or unsafe. In addition, this interactive map can help administrators pinpoint where the threat is and systematically clear rooms in a building. We can even send global alerts to all users, like natural disasters, Amber Alerts, or global pandemics. React to near misses, emergencies, and disasters immediately and keep your organization safer with Emergent 3. Schedule a demo or contact us to discover how Emergent 3 can help you prevent, notify, and respond better.
We spent some time with the vendor yesterday, and there are a number of our neighboring districts that are going to jump on this right away. And so I just think of today, we had a fire drill, or we had a fire alarm go off in the district office. And, you know, people, and of course, crossroads are impacted that way as well. So they go to their designated area. We have walkie-talkies, but there's also that sort of line of sight. So Melanie and Karen were walking around to see who was where. This app would allow communication so that I could just say, okay, is everyone accounted for? And instantly, you know, that's transmitted back. If it were a dangerous situation, those who are on the north end of Crossroads, we could type a quick message that says, you know, move quickly to the middle school. Or so the communication part is just amazing. Best part is the price is $3,000 for the whole district. Doesn't matter, no limit on the number of staff members or schools. So we'll be looking at this. I want to show this to our admin team and set up a demonstration with the company. But to me, when you can isolate where the problem or threat is as quickly as this, I think it's money well worth it.
I have a question. Is that just based on cell phone Wi-Fi? Like it's dependent on the cell phone towers working?
Yes.
Okay. And then I had another thought. What was it? Oh, BLRB's report. So part of their reporting indicated the lack of communications, like fire integrated communication, because
Right.
the building is so old. So would this be a mitigation for the risk that they called out in that reporting, or
It could
because
be,
it's only
because
dependent
it's
on
not just
that?
on the phone, it is on the your computer in your office. And so there'll be an alert there. And then you now have your phone as
And I don't know where we are in talking with BLRB about their stuff, but maybe that's a question next time we talk to them to find out if, you know, what level of, where they would put the risk. If we bought this thing, like how much does it mitigate those risks
Right.
that they called out for the buildings, for the integration?
Can I just jump in? I don't think it will. The specific thing that they were talking about is our fire panels aren't addressable. And basically what that means is if an alarm goes off, the building goes off, but the fire department doesn't know which alarm went off, the addressable panel will say, hey, in the lab, room CO3, I got something. So I don't think it would.
So it's not.
This is a nice part though, because it is a direct line to emergency services. So, and it can also be set up for a drill. So we set up a drill and that goes out. So now police and fire know that it's just a drill rather than an emergency.
Right.
So it'd be possible, hypothetically, I mean, you need to be dependent on somebody saying room 203 in the app, but
Yeah.
it could, it's just not as automated as
Right.
okay.
Is that something that teachers would have to carry with them at all times? Like if a teacher was taking their kids from their classroom to like say PE, then they're not in their room. Like it said that they could see where everyone is in.
That's right. You would have to have your phone with you.
So then on that kind of note, I don't know if anybody out there is as stubborn as my husband, but he doesn't have a cell phone. So what do we do about staff that don't have a cell phone? That's not necessarily a question you need to answer,
Right.
but something to think about.
Yeah, she did.
The only thing I would add too is training. What training are we doing? When are we doing that training? Because obviously that's something that needs to be included in our active shooter, all of that stuff that we do. So if it's something, $3,000 is a great price. But the tool that we're going to use, we obviously need to make sure that staff are.
That's right.
That's what my 2 cents. And yeah, desktop's an option as well. So while it doesn't provide the tracking, each teacher, I assume, has a desktop or a laptop even, that it could be installed on, so.
Okay, board, any other questions for Dr. Middleton? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next, 3B, Granite Falls Middle School Annual Report presented by Gabe Bianchini and Rachel Quarterman.
Well, first off, welcome to the middle school, and I wish we had the opportunity to kind of tour the middle school because there's a lot of great things that are going on here. And just kind of as a side note, I know we had 5-6 years ago, we had the STEAM building, and part of the focus for the last 5 years is really getting that thing operating and kids and teachers really working together as one. And someday, if you're available, come by, you can see some really great things happening that it was through the community's support. It was a very well spent building that has been produced, and kids are learning and doing a lot of great things for there. So, and then also, I need to say a huge thank you to the board, Dr. Middleton, everybody. I guess over the past 10 years, I did not know what it is like to have an assistant, and things that are happening. A lot of the positives that we're going to talk about today are a result of having 2 people be a part of this program, the middle school here. And on a side note on that too, just know that some of the things you're going to hear about tonight are also things that we're catching up on almost because of flying solo for the while that I have been. But again, having Rachel here as an assistant and really just a co-principal, the things that she's been incorporating and doing with our staff and our kids, we're going to see some growth through that for sure. So I just want to make sure you were aware of that also. For 21 and 22 goals, I don't think I need to read them to you guys, but in terms of the first goal, our 9th grade on track data, where are we now with that? And when we looked at the most current data, and the data that's released is usually kind of a year behind, it was extremely low. And so we started talking about it, started thinking about it, like, where did this drop off go? When we finally came to the realization that this data, the initial data, was from the 1920 school year and that's when grading was a little bit different also. While we were going through the COVID piece and the grading procedures, the online procedures, freshmen the grading was just easier, different. It was a different time at that point. And so now we get our data, and again, it's really low. And so this was our main focus last year, and we started thinking about this and thinking, okay, we have to narrow this down. And you heard Dr. Middleton talk about just growth, and we have to focus on our growth. And so we added a growth goal that we'll talk about here in a little bit. And really that's been the message throughout our school, is we're looking at growth, because even if we bump, and one of our goals, we bump 80% of our kids up from a level 1 standard to a level 2 standard, we're not going to see a growth in our SBAC scores. But we will see a growth in student, maybe it's grade level, maybe it's just a certain area of the SBAC that we grew in. And so really our message this year has been, the learning piece has been about growth more than, hey, we got to pass the SBAC. Eventually that will come. When we were a school that before COVID, our scores weren't that great. They were on the fairly low side, and but we were trending in the right direction. After COVID, there's a study by smarter people than me that if we're a school that was low before COVID, it's going to take us a little bit longer to dig out of it. Not saying that we're accepting of low scores and we're accepting of what's happening here, but just know that this is not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a process, 2-3 years of teachers really working hard with our kids and getting them to raise that 1 to 2 grade levels. Because when we look at our scores, over half of our kids are 2 and 3 grade levels below academically. And so that's going to take some time to get us going. But our teachers are really working hard at that. And just to let you know that there were some questions on Dr. Middleton's report about how is the growth going? And from our first iReady assessment to our second, we really stayed flatline, and Rachel will get more into this as when it's her turn to report, but our scores just kind of remained flatline. And so that was a frustration for our teachers for sure. They were hoping to see a little bump from all that they were doing. So our other 21-22, 100% of our staff and students will provide social supports to 100% of our staff and students. What we're doing with that, we have SEL for our students, social emotional learning. We have a very active counseling group with Alexis Rackley and Karina. They are meeting with kids daily, trying to help with scheduling, help with home needs, help with whatever need that a student has. Those two have gone above and beyond. We have our student support teams that we meet with and talk about individual kids, how we can help them, get them back on track. And then we also have our grade level meetings that we've been doing to reach that goal. I would say certainly that second goal, we are doing much better at the academic goal that we have. So this year's goals, again, I'll let you read them. The first goal is reintegrating families. And I think I spoke on this maybe even last year. I know I've shared it at some of our admin meetings. The thing that we have been missing at school and missing that connection piece with the families and the students is the opportunity to meet and gather. In terms of how are we doing in that, we just anecdotal data. we had a huge turnout for our student of the quarter. We had a huge turnout for open house. Parents are wanting to come back into the school. We are going to send out a survey during our March conferences just to get parent input on how we can improve this also. This year, it is just overall general feel of how things are going versus last year. It is a much, much better feeling. Kids are happy to be here, and you'll see some of the data with attendance and all that that'll reflect their excitement to be here. And so that has been a really strong part of the middle school. Clear set of behavior expectations. Again, this is a tribute to what Rachel has done. And at the beginning of the year, we set those clear goals and clear expectations for our teachers. And then we also had grade level meetings, and we met with each grade level going through our behavior expectations. And for the most part, there's always your 5%, but for the most part, our kids have been outstanding this year. They have really followed what our expectations are. Even if there was a challenge, you'd sit down with a kid and you could bring them to realize that this is why we're doing it. In terms of parent support this year, it has been a tremendous improvement over the past couple of years. And so those parts of the goals that we're seeing, we are really happy with those results. That third goal, that is a reflection from the 21-22 goal. It shows how much we dropped in that. And so getting our 9th graders ready on track, that is work in progress for sure. And I think the drop, like I said earlier, is a result of the way students were graded and the lack of being in-person learning shows us the drop. And so again, we're working on that, but these are our 2 real focuses this year, and they're 2 to 3 year goals. We really want to get our students up to the state average in our SBAC scores. So by the end of 24-25, ELA at 51%, math at 38%, science 43%. You'll hear the steps that we're taking throughout a little bit later. And again, this is what I touched on earlier. 80% of our middle school students will move from level 1 to level 2. That'd be a great jump. That is something we're working on. But just realize also when we focus on work that we are focusing on improvement, student learning improvement. Also, 80% of our middle school students will move from level 2 to level 3. This is where we should see some growth and some movement on the SBAC. And so, again, the 2 academic goals here is really what the discussions have been throughout the school year.
Perfect.
Thanks. And by the way, it's Twin Day. No,
We didn't plan it. So Dave is too kind. He forgot to mention that the reason that one of the main reasons I came back to Granite was because I knew who I would get the opportunity to work for. So too kind there. So as Mr. B said, this has really been our focus, right, around learning. So what does that look like with the data? So I'm going to go through our goals this year, break them down, take a look at the data that we're using, how are we progress monitoring, all of those pieces. So as Mr. B shared, and again, some of the data is a year behind, our iReady benchmarks are up to date. So we've definitely got some work to do, and our staff members are aware of that. It's really how are we using this data to inform our instruction on a daily basis? How are our staff utilizing those Wednesday PLCs? We also meet regularly as a student support team. So Mr. Carey, you had kind of mentioned around attendance and how are you using that data. One of the links later on is to our student support team agenda. And so one of the pieces of data that we pull when we meet on a student is that attendance data, as well as assessment and other pieces. So here is our current IRD data. So this is our reading data. So benchmark 1 was prior to our most recent finished in January. The graph looks a little bit different. We're talking about a handful of students. So there is growth, like Dr. Middleton said, but it is slow. So this is what it looks like for ELA team. I talked with John Thompson in terms of how they use their PLC time. And so they're looking at some common prompts for expository writing and how they can incorporate those based off of this most recent data, because they're seeing a gap. So when you segregate this and break it down, they were seeing some gaps around some of that expository writing. So that's how we're using data on a daily, if not weekly basis for sure as part of those fields. This is our math data. So our math teachers are working really hard with the new curriculum. They also have consultants that come in and support them around lessons, how they're accessing data, how they're using that data. And again, we're seeing kind of overall just a handful of students kind of shifting from our first benchmark to our most recent. So we're making gains, but we are a small district. So when you talk about it, we're talking, I think, with ELA of 7 or 8 students that have shifted and seen growth. But the 7 or 8 students that are being able to demonstrate that. This is what it looks like on a teacher level. So this was something I had added because I wanted to share some of the conversations that we're having with teachers. So this is an iReady goal sheet from one of our math teachers. And Mr. B did a really good job at looking at our incoming 6th grade math data and determining that we needed to put some interventions in place and put them in place immediately because it was urgent. So we have our 6th graders have 2 math classes. So they have an intervention class, and this is what the iReady goal sheet is from, and then they have their regular 6th grade math. So they get kind of a double dose of instruction and support. And so this iReady sheet tracks, so it shows growth, and it's a little bit hard to see. I covered up the student's name, but our teacher has a notebook for each class. So after the iReady was completed, this teacher sits down and meets with each teacher individually. And they talk about growth. They also talk about if there's a lack of, what are those barriers that are getting in the way of them making gains. And so some of the notes, I can't see it, I can't remember, but there are things like distracted easily. So those things that how can the teacher better support them being able to get that practice opportunity. On the right-hand side, this is some feedback that I had provided to some teachers. I really appreciated years ago being a part of some of the response to intervention and RTI work. And so it was, what are we doing with this data? I wanted to make sure that it was, yes, there was a push to get participation and get them completed, but once we have it, what do we do with it? How does it inform instruction? So these are some pieces and just some quick tips. They also came with some tangibles that we sent out to teachers in terms of, this doesn't necessarily have to be teachers doing all the work. How are we getting students to reflect on their performance on the iReady? So it was just some success feedback options and then some interventions. So getting kids to reflect on their own learning as well. Absolutely.
The 6th grade intervention class, that is new from last year. Last year, when they had 2 math classes, they spent 100 minutes in the same math class with the same math teacher going through just basically the lesson. The math intervention touches on not just the lesson, but it also computation and really narrows down things that kids are lacking in. So it's a different class. It's not just spending the 100 minutes like they did in the past. It is a true intervention class.
Nope. And Mr. B and I make a good team in that math is really where his passion is. Mine is in ELA. So we tend to, those are the teachers that we're evaluating. Those are the teachers that we're coaching. Those are the teachers that we're monitoring that their time is being used and they're using data on those Wednesdays to inform what's happening in the classroom. So this year, our starting point #1 was really, again, around that family involvement piece. So we wanted to continue that. But there's some action steps that have gone along specifically that maybe weren't happening last year. So here's the data that we're using to progress monitoring. So Healthy Youth Survey, this is from 21. So kiddos will take it again here this spring. So just know when we're looking at this data, it is kind of a year behind when we're looking at Healthy Youth Survey. So there were some specific pieces that we looked at within those in terms of why we created that goal and why we felt it was important. So there's some things to celebrate here. So as a whole, we're above the state average, right? Our kids feel safe here at Grand Falls Middle School. Our kids feel like they have opportunities to be involved. In terms of Children's Hope Scale, it was in line with the state average. We certainly would like to be above, but something to shoot for. We also, 67% of our 8th graders felt like they had somebody to talk to, which was huge. Mr. B always really wants to make sure that all of our kids have that adult. One of the questions we ask sometimes when we're having those challenging conversations with students is, who is your go-to, right? Who is your person? Because it may not be me, and that is okay. So here's what that data looks like. We've got lots of pieces. I just chose to pick these out. So you can see that, we're right in line with the state average in terms of opportunities to be involved. Kids are enjoying school, and our 6th graders come in above average. So we've looked a little bit around, how do we keep that? But by 8th grade, we're just in line rather than being above that state average. So what are the things we can do for students when they're entering 6th grade to keep them involved and engaged and enjoying school? So here's some of the action steps we put in place. So we have monthly newsletters that are going out consistently. This Crystal in our office, a couple pieces that we've added. So we have monthly assessment like tips that we just added in terms of this is coming up, this is what you can do as a parent, this is how you can help. And then we also have some tech tips that Mr. Cash actually has helped us put together. So earlier in the year, it was about how do we use social media responsibly. And it was giving some of our parents some tools about how to monitor that. We meet now regularly. So we have student support teams, and then we have our evaluation team, which is our special education team that meets and reviews data. So our special education team met this morning. We had about 5 students on the agenda. Again, we looked at attendance, we reviewed their plans, and then as a team came together and adjusted or scheduled meetings as needed with those families. Or sometimes we find out that there's people that we should have invited to the table that we'll make sure that we invite to the time. Mr. B mentioned huge turnout for open house, in the quarter, standing room only. I had to sneak in the back. Success in education, we were talking about that. Certainly you guys see an increase in those. We have Fun Friday, which we put in place at the end of every quarter, which really is no F Friday, meaning that you can't have any Fs to participate, but it's a motivator for a lot of our kiddos so that they know that that's coming up. And again, that's put on by our ASB. So our students are involved in that day as well in terms of advertising. You can see we have a lovely dance on Friday. If you'd like to come experience a middle school dance. Mr. Carey, no? Middle school dance, right? Just okay.
No, thanks.
Success Fair, we're looking forward to that. We're starting to plan what that might look like. And then we have lots of clubs, which I think is really unique to the middle school. When I left, we didn't really have these in place. And I think this is huge. And it is a testament to the work we did around the social integration and giving kids opportunities. So I mean, this is cool, like roller skating club, we have math club, gamers club, it's small engine club, which I think met for the first time yesterday. We had our wonderful new hire in our reset room, actually did like a pre-assessment with the kiddos in terms of what they knew. And to be able to have those conversations around data was pretty cool at that level. So lots of cool things happening. Mr. B had also mentioned this team building. Having been out of the district for a while, I have kiddos that I have known in previous districts that have showed up. And so I knew some of the families, and it was the coolest thing to see the look on our parents' faces when we talked about them having the opportunity to do art and manufacturing and technology and culinary. That is an experience that is very unique here to Grand Falls Middle School. So our goal number 2. As Mr. B said, we worked with our BLT team and put together some behavior expectations. Really, it says consequences, but it's progressive discipline in that. What are some interventions that we're putting in place? How are we working with students, giving them the opportunity to practice? And then here's the data that we were able to pull. I did notice a typo. So this was actually the first set of data on the left is through 2022. So there's some interesting things about the data, and you could kind of make assumptions when Mr. B and I talked through it. But one of the things when you're looking at it, so last school year, there were 144 total discipline referrals through 120, which is when I pulled of the year to make sure that our teachers were adding discipline notes as data into Skyward. So even though it shows up as an increase of referral, one of the cool things is we just got one today where you'll open up a referral, and really what it is the teacher letting us know that they've already called home and had that conversation based on whatever they were seeing in the classroom. So really those tiered supports, those tier 1 and 2 happening in the classroom. So it looks like an increase, but in reality, we're very, very similar on par when we look at tier 3. So we're talking about big behaviors, physical aggression, theft, fighting, things that Dave and I deal with and respond to immediately because they're a safety risk. And so we're pretty on par with where we were last year, which seems about right. But if you look at that tier 2 behavior, last year we're at 13%, this year we're at 50%. Our teachers are handling a lot of those in the classroom. They're setting expectations. They're the ones being that first communication home, which has helped. Mr. B and I no longer get the, well, that's the first I'm hearing of this. They have typically, if it's a tier 1 or tier 2 behavior, they've typically heard from the teacher. And a lot of times it isn't a surprise when Mr. B and I pick up the phone. And we're really pushing the pick up the phone. Right? When you're talking, nobody wants to get an email that says, right, your kid had a discipline issue. You want to be able to respond and talk to them in person. So this data for me is promising because it shows some of our tiered supports and interventions are working. Action team goals, again, we talked a little bit about the role our BLT team is playing in terms of driving some of that work. We have semester grade level team meetings. So we meet with the 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders. We'll be doing some reteaching here in a little bit. Just kind of some refreshers and reminders to start 2nd semester. Our students are doing amazingly with cell phones. So we've got some celebrations around some of these behavior expectations. We had a sub who typically hasn't subbed in a while, and she had walked by my office and she goes, "I'm so glad you guys don't have cell phone issues." And I wanted to like back her up, and I'm like, "Can you repeat that?" Because this is all I've known in terms of what cell phones look like. Our students put them away when asked. You don't see them. You don't see them in the lunchroom. You don't see them in the classroom. They're really being responsible and learning how to use them as a tool and what times are appropriate to use cell phones. So again, it's about that practice and that opportunity. In terms of progressive discipline, trying to put those universal supports in place, which according to Ross Green, who I adore, really gets away from about 80 to 85% of office referrals. If we're handling those things in the classroom, if you're setting clear expectations, if you're letting students know what's expected of them. I did include a link, and I think you got that as well, just in terms of, it'll say draft. So we're just kind of reviewing them and going through what some of those look like. We realized early on in the year that we needed a better way to address vaping because we were seeing some frequent offenders. And so we put some interventions in place. So we have an online course, for example, that students can go in and take, and they have to complete it as a requirement. We have Francisco who meets with some of our students. We have, unfortunately, some students whose backpacks are searched every morning. We've just put some things in place to try and really give students the opportunity to maybe get some education, make some better decisions. And then for our students that are really struggling, having them come in and they just kind of know it's a part of their day that their backpacks can be searched. Again, discipline entry for teacher review. So we're playing around with using the note section, but what we're finding is Mr. B and I aren't always getting those. So it's why you see that increase in referrals, and it's because our teachers are putting in everything, even the intervention of, I pulled the kid aside and had a conversation out in the hallway. And then our last goal, as Mr. B said, I think when we're looking at our 9th grade on track data, a lot of that, I think I actually pulled it if I remember. I'll come back, I'll speak to that. So we have kind of a Plan Do Study Act that I knew, John. So we have student support teams. So I lead our 7th grade, Alexis Radcliffe, our student support advocate, leads our 6th grade, and then Karina Myers, our counselor, does our 8th grade. And I included a common data and student support team notes, just so you can see what data we are coming to those meetings with. So if there's a concern, typically it's behavior at a middle school, but it could be an academic concern that a teacher, sometimes it's a parent, brings to us. So this is kind of that first line of pulling together a team, and then what's the data that we're using to make those decisions around next steps. So we have a few kiddos that have been on point sheets and seen success with that. We've had a few kiddos that earn rewards, and we've seen some success with that. We also have kiddos that it'll work for a while, and then we need to re-meet and come up with a new plan. So we're meeting quite often, not only around instructional, but also behavior supports that are needed for students to be successful. And at a middle school, really getting those behaviors at a place where they can access that classroom and that learning and education. So here's where you can kind of see that drastic difference. This is the data we have. So 2019-20 is more on par with what we're seeing now. And then 2021 is where we saw some of those grading practices different because of COVID. So it'll be interesting to see once we get that updated data, if we're continuing to stay on trend and those lower numbers last year were an anomaly. This is a huge celebration. Mr. Carey, we're talking about attendance. So this was pulled straight from OSBI's report card. So as a school district in 2020-21, 82.1% attendance rate. As a middle school, 92.8%. And if you looked at our data in terms of how many of those absences were unexcused that were actually entered as reported, I wouldn't be surprised if that's even higher. So our students want to be here. So the plans that were put in place to socially reintegrate, get our students and staff back in safely, certainly worked as demonstrated by some of that attendance data, and a huge celebration and a testament to the work our teachers and staff are doing every day. So student growth goals, coaching and PLC connection. I mentioned that I typically work with our ELA and our CTE teachers around PLCs and then also classroom practices. Mr. B works with math. So I just kind of wanted to show you kind of how that connects and the coaching conversations we're having around using data. So this was our ELA team. So they meet as a PLC on Wednesdays, they met today. And so they wanted to look at some of those baby steps because some of that iReady data is a little daunting. And so they're looking at for this year, kind of showing, they wanted to show an increase of 5% or more in their overall reading level as measured by those benchmarks. We got pretty close. We're not quite there yet. That connects to that 80% goal that we have that's part of our school improvement plan. Our CTE one's pretty cool. So as a team, they decided they're using their PLC time to make sure that they have a standards-based grading system for identifying students who would be appropriate for advanced classes. So rather than just saying, I want to be in advanced culinary or I want to be in advanced manufacturing, a teacher can go back and look at their grades from culinary, look at their grades from manufacturing, see if they met standard, and then again, use data to make that decision about whether that would be an appropriate enrichment class for them. And then I'll let Mr. B talk a little bit more about PLCs, how we're using them, share some of the common data forms that we're using.
Okay, so for me, I had the opportunity to go to the PLC conference this summer, and it was an aha moment for me. We had, in the past, we had several teachers that met and they talked about kids, they talked about, but the true PLC, we weren't there, and we weren't really focusing on student growth as much as more about just individual kids and maybe some discipline issues. And so me going to the conference this year, I was able to really kind of see what a good PLC looks like. Knowing that, I was able also, when we were talking about this, one of our teachers came up and said, "Hey, Dave, I was a part of a different district and we had a real successful PLC program and PLC structure. And if you need me to help, I'm willing to help." And so probably about a month ago, maybe even a little longer, she did a presentation to our staff and really focused on the 4 essential questions of a PLC, setting up the structures of a PLC, setting the Google document, all those things that needed to be in place, and then really looking at or talking to our staff about what we need to look at as a team and how we look at data and how we kind of extract data from iReady or classroom assessments and really focus on that student learning and student growth. And so with her help, we are, and I said this earlier today, we're probably behind in our PLCs with the rest of the district, but just knowing that with Tamitha Politich, she's our teacher, on board and kind of leading that and being the voice of the staff and a well-respected teacher. And so that our staff is listening and they're really committed to making that jump from, hey, we're just meeting to really focus on that student learning piece. And so our staff did a survey that we received at one of our admin meetings. And as you can see on everybody really circled that we are just at the beginning of our PLCs, which that is fine. I mean, I knew that's where we would be. Our staff realizes that, and our goal is to jump into the emerging or getting up to where the rest of the district is. And so again, Tamitha has kind of led that work and like I said, she's a strong voice and a respected voice, and our teachers are really committed to building our PLC structure. This is just to show you that what the Google Drive looks like. It's broken up into different subject areas. Each one has, they'll put their agendas in there, they'll put notes in there. And then any staff member, because we have teachers, some teach science and math, some teach an English and a history. And so they'll be able to participate and look at notes if they weren't able to attend that current PLC. Kind of covered this already. Our job alike, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, our ELA department went to the high school, worked with the high school team. So we're doing some cross grade level growth there. Rachel kind of talked about all the other groups that are meeting.
And it also provides our special education teachers, especially maybe that don't have a lot of partners, to be able to meet with their parents. So they have a PLC that we started and goals in place for really good communication that we're wanting to see in those classrooms. And that's a little bit different, but really some work that should be celebrated that our teams are doing in special education.
So now is the time for questions. If you got any?
Sure.
There we go.
You want to go first?
No, go ahead. Director Carey, go ahead.
I think someone has a question, but we take questions as part of later on. This is just the bullet. Sorry to get ahead of you there. A couple of things. Mr. B, I appreciate you, by the way, giving a great presentation. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into what you presented and some of the information. I guess starting off with, it's challenging for me as a director really kind of wrap my head around all of this information because it wasn't really included in the packet, the things that you provided. And the OFPI sheet obviously was on its landscape and its portrait, so it kind of cuts off.
So if you open that in landscape, you'll be able to see that. I texted you back on that.
Yeah, it wouldn't rotate.
No, she was able to open it like
I
that.
have great for me too, yeah.
No, it just rotates the entire thing. It doesn't.
Yeah, if you go to layout,
Our apologies.
yeah.
Things I just tried to hit the button too and it didn't work, so I wasn't able to see some of the information, but I guess I wanted to lean into the PLC piece as well as, well, I guess let's start here with the goals. So some of the goals that you provided, I was struggling to try to understand them. Specifically the goal number one, the using data, staff, students, increase parent involvement, measured by 10%. I guess I wasn't clear on what you're trying to get to. So it sounds like potentially you're going to give a survey and then you want that survey results to increase by 10%. But what are we measuring? Are we just measuring opportunities? Are we measuring actual involvement? Talk me through that a little bit.
So like I said earlier, the thing that we were missing was parent involvement. And so in terms of opportunities and some things that we have been hearing from parents, our communication has been poor. Why didn't we send out this information at a timely manner? And so that's going to be part of the survey. Right now, the survey that we're going to do in March is going to be kind of a baseline data for us of where we're at in terms of family communication. How can we get our parents more involved in the school and then satisfied about the middle school? Because I mean, you as anyone has seen different pockets get on social media and talk about harassment and all of the things that are happening at the middle school. And so the survey that will go out during our conferences, we'll just ask parents some different type of questions. What are you looking for in a middle school? How can we improve in this? And then we'll put some action steps to that so that by June, or next year, next fall, when we resend it out, hopefully we can see a 10% improvement in really the satisfaction piece is the most important to me, because if we have 10% satisfaction, I would say the rest of it has kind of fallen into place. Yes, we are better at communicating. Yes, we have provided student supports at a better level. Yes, our parents are coming back to our events. And so I think that's where we will see the growth is just through satisfaction. Jump in and say.
So that 10% is this survey that you haven't created yet.
Yep.
With asking where are you satisfied as of right now?
Yep.
Then again, this school year, how are you satisfied now? That number is going to increase by 10%.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as measured by
The data.
fully satisfied, partially satisfied, like is there in
That's
Sounds great.
what we
We
will be developing that with the help of Ann Ranker, who is our PLC leader as an admin team, and she will help us create the survey to reflect the growth.
I got it. I guess, let me just ask the question a different way. So I would guess, and it's tough because you haven't made it, that there are multiple options: fully satisfied, partially satisfied, not satisfied. So that 10%, is that 10% all the way up to fully satisfied? Is that 10% in like some lower other than fully satisfied? Do you get what I'm asking here? I'm trying to, again, visualize
What's the quantity?
what's the quantitative thing that we're tying the 10% to. Thank you.
We will tie that into satisfaction at the middle school, and it's going to have to be more specific than just somewhat. I mean, we will look at the data and come up when we were talking with Ann. develops a survey that will show a quantitative growth.
Okay. What, does the board get to see that? Not that we know, I'm curious
Yeah.
to, once that gets created. I know Director Beach is going to talk about this other one. The goal of the 2034 Smart Balance SBA, the increase 51 to 38. I believe it's the 24-25. So previously, that's the exact goal that we had last year, I believe, and you just moved it out another year. So I guess why is that? Why? I guess specifically, we're moving it out a year for a reason. Obviously, something that we had in our plan didn't work or didn't reap the outcomes that we wanted. So what was that thing? What are we going to do different? What have we learned? What's different about this? Because also this plan doesn't have kind of that step-by-step that the OSPI report had, so I can follow along.
Certainly what we are doing differently, like I spoke on earlier and Rachel covered, the math intervention piece with the 6th grade. It's not just 2 math classes. So hopefully those kids that are in the math intervention piece are getting truly an intervention. Why did we move the goal up just a year? As we mentioned earlier, our growth was non-existent. It was just flatline. And so we are still trying to reach the state average. I didn't want to bring down the percentage and say, because we didn't grow, so I'm going to move it down. ELA only needs to be at 45%. No, we still have that goal, attaining that. What was the other part of your question?
Well, I guess I'll just summarize it. I guess I was hoping to have an honest conversation on what, obviously something went wrong and it was previously a year ago. So like, what are those things? What have we learned, right? The adults got together, we looked at our plan. It was a good plan. My coach used to say in football, every football play scores a touchdown on paper. But in the real world, obviously every football play doesn't score a touchdown. So why was that? Oh gosh, this didn't go right, or that didn't go right, or those types of things. I mean, one of the things that's challenging for me as a school board member looking at these is that we spend so much time talking about, okay, well, here's the new plan, here's how we did, here's the new plan. But in my mind, we need to spend as much time talking about, okay, did we make the previous plans? No. Okay, well, what do we need to do? What do we need to start doing? What do we need to stop doing? And what do we need to do more of to now try to, make the plan again on the second time? Because I feel like you're just kind of constantly just moving the goalpost.
Yep.
So I guess that's what I'm hoping for is just, okay, Carl, here's 2 or 3 things, and I hate to put you on the spot, but obviously I didn't have this data so I can really fuss through it. Okay, here's what didn't work of that really great plan that we had last time, and here's how we're going to make that better. We're going to get it this time.
Okay, so when I look at the 5th grade data and what they're doing, that's going to result in growth in the middle school. When we have a group of kids coming in at 20% in math from the 5th grade, now they're 6th graders. So that 20% of the kids is the group that we're hoping, they'll be the 20% that'll pass at 6th grade, and then we got to bring some people along to improve our scores. So what hasn't worked well?
My
Really,
observation would have been, I don't think we were using data well to inform a lot of our processes. So there were systems instructors that were lacking, and I think that's a huge celebration. So we are behind maybe where other schools are, but we now have the systems and structures in place to have those data-driven conversations. So when we're having academic and or behavior concerns, like we are meeting as a team, using that data and then informing what we do every day. So I showed you like this tweets, data, math, like this is what we're doing every day. What do I, as the adult, right, need to do differently? Because if half of my class isn't meeting standard, I have to differentiate, I need to teach. So we're having those conversations around data, and it's a change in thinking and mindset, right? So there are times when I've come to a meeting and we don't have data to make decisions, and we'll call it off, or we'll come back, or we'll make a different plan. Because otherwise we're making decisions without any of that data to support, and then not being able to measure whether it's. So that's just an observation. I think we've made huge gains between September and now. Those systems and structures are in place. Our teachers are having conversations. They're also coming to meetings prepared with data, which I don't know if it was happening on a regular basis last year.
Got it. I appreciate you filling in that gap. So I guess that leads me to, and that was great information. That leads
I'm sorry I'm standing back here, but cameras in a weird spot. I mean, I can stand behind Mr. B and do this, but that's an option too.
No, I appreciate that, and I certainly don't want to take all of the time, but I guess just leaning into that just a little bit more, and you have to forgive me, but the essential feeling I get is that PLCs weren't really done with fidelity and depth to really previously to really go into data and to look at those.
They were done to the best of the teacher's knowledge about PLCs. And so then when I went to the conference this year, shared with Rachel and then Tamitha sharing, kind of matching the mindset of that conference that I went to. Now our teachers have a clear understanding of focusing on the 4 essential questions of a PLC and looking at data. There was a lot of discussion in the past about students, but maybe not student growth. It was more about student interventions in behavior and student celebrations because of what they've done, but not like breaking down data. So is that the teacher's fault? I don't think so, because the knowledge of what a PLC is supposed to look like wasn't there. I mean, PLCs go meet and talk about students. Okay, that's what we're doing. And so now going through that conference and going again and bringing a different group of people to that conference, it's going to expand the knowledge base even more throughout, so that when we have PLCs and the focus is on student learning and reviewing data and looking at where specific pockets of data where kids are struggling, that's going to improve student learning also.
So thank you for saying that, Mr. B. So obviously there's the PLCs have PLC leaders, right? We pay extra to leaders to kind of lead this PLC. So I guess, is it your opinion that now those PLC leaders, because PLCs are really for teachers by teachers, right? Iron sharpening iron, talking about identifying kids, like you said, the 4 essential questions. I mean, you know more about this than I do. I shouldn't masquerade like I'm some great wise man about PLCs. Everything I know I've been told or I've read. I've never actually even been in a PLC, so I'm certainly not telling you how to do PLCs. Don't take my question for that. I guess what I'm asking is, do you feel is there a learning piece that's missing here, or have we filled that learning piece where now the PLC leaders have the information that they need to be able to effectively learn or lead these PLCs, and they are equipped, able, and willing to effectively lead these PLCs? Or are there changes that we need to make in those PLC leaderships too?
I would say we are at the point where our leaders should be able to, but when you look at the structure of the PLC is the entire group. Each one brings their data. So yes, the PLC leaders should be able to construct a solid group now with the presentation and the continual help really from Tamitha and Rachel and myself that have been to that conference, that we can effectively change the way that we were doing PLCs to a more structured, more consistent, meeting time and focusing on the students, yeah.
All right, one last question, I'll pass the mic. So obviously, I couldn't read through all of the plan, but what is it that you need from us? What is what can we do to support you? Is there pieces of this that you're like, hey, I can't get to this unless you give me blank? What are those things? I'd love to have an honest conversation on that. What are your audacious asks?
My answer will always be the same. It's the same answer I gave you last year. Unfortunately, the 5% of the students that sometimes make the reputation of the middle school. So be cheerleaders for all the schools here. I mean, you read the social media, you hear from the constituents as much as I do. I don't read the social media stuff, but you kind of have a bigger pulse of the society community. Not everything that comes out is true about what's going on at the middle school. I would invite anybody to come in and see what's going on at the middle school in terms of the classroom, in terms of student behavior, in terms of, Rachel mentioned it, just the general stuff about rules. 95% of our kids are outstanding. Unfortunately, the 5% are the ones that moms, parents, families put on social media that this kid, did you hear this? Did you hear that? And it sets a bad reputation for the middle school. Be a cheerleader for this district, and I know you guys are. You're orange and black all the way, and I love that about you guys. But that's kind of where I would love to have people come in. I'd love to have you guys come in and see what's going on, so you can give an honest answer to the community that, man, that $10 million you spent 5 years ago, it is on fire at the middle school. And so those are the type of things that I need your support on.
Melanie, Corey was able to send it to you in the correct view, so you won't have to manipulate it or do something. So I just want to make sure that the board can access it appropriately. Okay. And JBJ was really excited about originally being in his room. So he had a couple student projects, talking about the steam room. He had some stickers that kiddos designed. He's got a wall, and then kiddos last semester just finished up their 2D signs. And so again, if you have the opportunity to come in, we have a lot of staff, a robotics teacher as well, that would love to show off just some of the cool projects and things that our kids are doing.
Thank you.
I'll take the mic next, I guess. Thank you. Appreciate you putting together the presentation, but I do have, is it on?
I turned it off.
I was like, it doesn't sound on. There we go. Yeah, that's better. So I appreciate you putting together the presentation. Unfortunately, I brought the wrong glasses, so I either can see the computer or you, but not both. So just, I took some notes and I'm gonna read those back because that's the basis of my question. So I think I heard you say the majority of our students are 2 to 3 grade levels behind. And from our first to second iReady, we're flatlined. And our 9th grade on track data last time, our hope was 59 to 69%. But what we're looking at is 32 to 42%. So we went from 59 to 32% on track for gen ed students, and our goal is 19% to 29% for our special education students. Our general feeling of how things are going, our kids are excited to be here, and you've set clear expectation for our teachers per grade level. And kids have been outstanding, and they're following expectations. And what you really wanted was 51% ELA, 38% in math, and 43% in science, as well as the 80% moving from level 1 to 2 and level 2 to 3. Did I get those numbers?
Well, the 51%, that's by 24, 25. That was what Carl was talking about.
Okay.
Just bump that up. So
Okay.
it's a 2-year goal.
All right. So then when I go back to what Dr. Middleton was mentioning, he was talking about teacher assessments, diagnostic assessments, and the triangulation of that work. And too much talk in the past about operations versus actual data is sort of a missed opportunity, right? And the need for to discuss learning data. So I think I've got that. One thing I highlighted from the notes that I took for him was 100% of students need to make 1.5 years of gains. So then I go to the goals I see here, and overall I'm concerned because I like that there's an intervention class for math in 6th grade. It's 100 minutes in math, but we did 100 minutes. And if the numbers I saw are correct, we stayed the same. So we have an opportunity there, I think. I think we should celebrate that we have the class, but the data that you showed me says that there wasn't an improvement.
And when I say not a lot of growth, 1 to 2%. So no, I call that flatline.
Yeah.
And that's the frustration right now with our staff. And again, we are going to have to dig deeper into what's going on in the classroom because staff was at the point of, okay, we are going to see some real growth. And when we look at different individual kids in special education, wow, that kid jumped 2 grade levels, that kid jumped 80%. And so we have those little pockets, but as an overall, yeah, we stayed flatline. And so it is a look of what's going on in the classroom and what kind of instruction do we need to change. I think Rachel hit it spot on the head, just really focusing on data that might not have been happening over the years.
So I think I saw between 19 and 21% on grade level fairly consistently across the chart that you showed.
Yes.
So, and you have the intervention at 6th grade math. Have you considered those interventions for 6th grade ELA, 7th grade math, 7th grade? I mean, is that something that?
When we look at the entire schedule, yes, we look at that. We also, just on the business side of things, we have to include history. We have to include science. We have to include, and in a 6-period day right now, there isn't spots for like a 2-block English class, 2-block math class. And I know your response is going to be, well, Dave, that's the most important piece, English and math.
Well, my response is, well, Dave, you're telling me that we're between 19 and 21. Dr. Middleton is saying we need to make 1.5 years growth.
Right.
And we have a problem because the day isn't long enough and there's just not enough slots in the day. I agree, that's a problem, right? In my humble opinion, that's where the focus needs to be. So I guess that's why I'm challenging the goals, because yes, I want parents to be engaged. I absolutely do. But
I would challenge that.
Do I want us to spend time writing a survey to measure the number of respondents to a survey, and an increase of respondents to a survey between March and June versus whatever it takes to solve that problem? I don't have the answer, so I'm not saying, but if you had extra time if I could give you some time back.
In my opinion, I would say that, yes, English and math are important, but there is also other classes that are important for these kids. And the SEL class is a very important class. And so when you look at that, and let's focus on English and let's focus on math, because our scores are extremely low, what goes away? And that's where.
I don't know if it's something goes away or something we do differently. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm just saying, and maybe I have no right to challenge it, but I'm just going to say it out loud. You have the same number of hours in a day as I do. And it sounds like you're struggling to find the answer and very busy and got a lot of things going. So if it is, write a survey and measure 10%
That's
increase
one of our-
responses. I don't know. Anyway,
That's one of our goals. The
So-
others are the academic side and the piece about not having enough hours in the day. I mean, that we do also have to follow state requirements that yes, history is required for these kids, science.
not challenging A.
And so, I mean, I'm just like, I would love to be able to have the kids be in an English block and be in a math block and really focus on the science. But then I go, at what extent? Because PE is required and history is required. And that's something we added at the 6th grade level this year was a history class, again, because we were not meeting the state requirements on that. And so again, what goes away when we add some reading and math? And really reading should be, we talked about this today. Kids that can't read, now they can't read math. They can't read science. They can't read their English book. Kids may be able to read a document real well, but reading, knowing what they're reading is lacking. And so those are the things that within the classroom and when we talk with teachers, that is our focus. The parental piece, that kind of starts with Rachel and I, and that is, we are bringing that back because that's important too. I mean, when we have 3 or 4 goals up there, the academic piece is always the most important. But things that we were lacking that do affect the academic piece also is the parent involvement, the community involvement, kids feeling like they want to be here. And so all those things come into play. And I'm not arguing with your idea or your thoughts of the math and English need to be the focus. Absolutely, they need to be.
I don't think I'm saying the focus, but between 19 and 21%.
Yeah,
Our tagline is we expect success.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see the goals to sort of circle that, right? We expect success. And what do we need to do? Your school, our school board, what do we need to do in a partnership to expect success from our students? Because we're not there yet. So what do we need to do to make that happen? I feel like we expect success for our students, for our staff, for our community. The goals need to revolve around that. I guess if I were to put everything in a nutshell, that's what I would say about that.
okay.
And I think there's a reason that Mr. B and I probably ended up in a middle school is because, I mean, my thoughts are pretty similar. I think around like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we have a lot of kids whose basic needs aren't being met. So when you talk about sometimes where our time's being spent with students is making sure that we have students that have transportation to and from school. It's making sure that we have students that parents can access the free and reduced lunch. Within the last week, I've had 3 kids that have needed a new pair of shoes. So some of those just basic needs. I would also say that when you look at Hattie's data and you look at how we move these goals forward, that #1 piece is, do I have an adult that believes in me? Do I have an adult that believes that I can succeed? Do I have an adult that believes that I can grow? And so I think there are a lot of our kids are not there yet. They don't have their person. They don't have their adult who believes in them enough or that they feel comfortable enough going to be able to make those gains. So I think there's a lot of different factors. Absolutely. Like, we're not happy with our test scores. It makes us sad. We've had conversations. It's one of the reasons that I personally took our 7th grade student support team, because as a whole, we were seeing our data was showing us that that's where we were seeing a lot of the discipline, but it was also where our lowest students were. And so those types of decisions in terms of targeting, making sure those needs are met, but then also making sure our students are getting what they need so that they can access that education. So I feel like there's a direct correlation between students need to be engaged, have their basic needs met, and we're to kind of access those pieces. We're not there yet, 100% agree.
Yeah, go ahead.
We can do better by our students.
No, I heard not.
So I just wanted to say, that I'm actually really pleased and excited on your goal for parent involvement. It's a huge passion of mine, and being where I'm at, student teaching right now in a different place, but their expectations for parents, and parental involvement is huge, and the student success, because of that is exponential, and I think it's incredibly important. That being said, I've emailed you, both of you, about a project that Karen and I are working on, which is a roadmap for parents on how they can be involved. And it's got me thinking, maybe we need to add some expectations in there as well. So I'm excited to see that. The question that I had, for Rachel, and forgive me, I think you explained this, but
Probably really quick.
you'll have to explain it to me like I'm in second grade, because that,
No.
my mentality right now is to teach in second grade. But, on, slide 17, which is the Skyward Discipline data.
Yeah, so I had to, so here's the challenging part.
Yeah.
So data dashboard that Dr. Middleton spoke to, for whatever reason, Adam Gessman was great, responded right away, but we weren't able, I wasn't initially able to pull the report. And then when I had contacted him, he pulled the report and it was blank. And so it wasn't pulling the data from last year. So I didn't have the comparison.
Okay.
So the data actually looked like a Skyward printout and me with a highlighter and then tiering them and then putting that data in there. So it's probably why it wasn't as pretty as it could have been had it come from data dashboard or OSBI report card.
That's okay. My question on it though is, from 2022 to now, or from 2021. Year two went from 13% to 50%. Am I understanding that it's not necessarily the amount of behaviors, but it's the amount of reporting? And,
Correct.
okay.
Our teachers, so we provided our BLT team, that was one of the things they, around our goal of setting clear behavior expectations and then progressive discipline. And that was some of the work that Anne, one of our consultants who works on our PLCs, had kind of brought to us. And so that was what we were hearing from them, is they needed more communication from us.
Okay.
And so this allows us, like even the conversations we had before the meeting were, hey, did you see, right? We've got at least 5 or 6 things between the two of us that will address and have those conversations with students in the morning. So it kind of allows that communication. So I would say we have a pretty accurate pulse on what's happening in the classroom with students. You could probably ask us about any of our kiddos, but unfortunately is the ones that we see in the office quite often.
Okay. And then the second question I had was just for my own enjoyment. You were, where is it? Okay, slide 11, you're talking about like the Healthy Youth Survey.
Yeah.
You mentioned Children's Hope Scale,
Yeah.
and I just don't know what that is, and I was wondering if you could explain what that was.
So it was kind of, I think, almost like, Mr. Carey was explaining where you kind of have that, like, what is that called? Like art scale, where they kind of check. Perfect. Life art scale where you kind of check, and so it puts them within that hope scale. It's kind of measuring of hope. So there's a series of questions that go with some of these. We've been working, so we looked as a PLC at our Healthy Youth Survey data for health teachers, actually today and then last Wednesday. And so we're taking a look at that data and some of those other pieces in terms of informing maybe some decisions we make around curriculum, right? What are the needs that our students are having? So one of the things, for example, is that our curriculum right now in health and fitness doesn't speak to vaping. Yet we know that's something based on our data that students are experiencing, that we're seeing. So, and we also need to do a better job of informing our parents. So one of the to-dos that came out of our PLC that are health and fitness teachers was getting into our newsletter, letting parents know that the Healthy Youth Survey data is coming, because our 6th grade participation is really low. And I think we're teaching some things in class, but yet we have a lot of students that we're not asking those questions on the survey. So we can absolutely do better with getting all of our students to participate in that.
And something to offer on that is just listening to the people on social media. They get afraid when they see this Healthy Youth Survey, and they don't know what it is, and it scares them. So some way to ease their mind.
Yeah, and we've been working with Francisco, and I'm not sure what his official title is, but that was something he had brought up. And so we're gonna address it by trying to get some education out in that newsletter with some links. And then maybe an opportunity for parents to come in that have questions, kind of like a Q&A forum.
Okay, thank you.
Good point.
Oh, I'm funny. I think I'm playing loud. No, yeah, I appreciate, first and foremost, I appreciate the acknowledgement of issues. It's very easy to, you know, to paint over or gloss over certain things. You know, data's been a big part for the board. You know, as of recently, it's always been a big part of my life. And I mean, data can be shifted and molded in different ways, and it can provide some great insights. But also, right, if we're looking for pretty, we're going to find pretty. If we're looking for answers, they might not always be the best. I do have one quick question. This could be a rhetorical question if there's not a thought process behind it or anything as of yet. But looking at SMART goal number 1, growing survey approval by 10%. Okay, so we assume that we can quantify from March to June, so on and so forth. Reason behind 10%.
So it was data, again, I think, my understanding was it was work that was starting last year with Ann Ranker and part of getting our PLCs going. But ultimately, we just needed a baseline and we didn't get it when we did hope.
Okay.
So I think that seemed like a small thing, so.
Okay, because yeah, I see that, and it's like, if we don't know where we're starting, then I guess I would just like to see that number be revised potentially after the first one, because if we're 85%,
Yeah.
great, 10% makes sense. But if we're at 40% satisfaction, 10% is not good, right? So revising that as we go along. SMART goal number 2 with the behavioral issues. This is also one of the things where data really can be moved around and shifted and manipulating. So while there was a 50% increase in tier 2 reporting, it actually also diluted the tier 3 reports. So while it only went up 2%, it more than doubled in reports across year over year. So that's a concern that I see as we went from 20 from this time last year to 42 this year. So I would look, once again into reviewing. Hopefully internally, you're reviewing that and seeing the distinct count versus just a percentage change, because obviously, like I said, those results are getting diluted from tier 2.
And it's fair. I told you how they were calculated. Completely fair.
Yeah.
We also have an ISS log that we review as well as part of that. Just a lot of information there that I probably didn't want to share, but I mean, those are pieces that we do internally.
And then what I did see is there's a change in attendance, which is good. At least in that slide where it showed, the attendance reporting, I guess I should say, is so there's an increase in attendance, but that increase in attendance seems to be aligning with the increase in tier 3 events. So just something, and when I see tier 3 events, I'm seeing, like you said, those are the big ones. We've had 22 more this year. So I'm curious, and this probably isn't the venue to go through, like, how are we addressing those? How are those being reported? And looking at those tier 3, are those 42 distinct tier 3 events, or were there 6 that were accounted for one event?
There's a handful of students that are responsible for them.
Okay. And so that's something to, think through and look at. I think I had one more thing with behavioral. And actually, then just what constitutes regular attendance? Because the slide that Dr. Middleton showed that no grade was above 70% of 90% or greater. So like
those are generated by letters. So Dr. Middleton talked a little bit about what's our process, kind of our interventions for students that have chronic absenteeism. So those letters are generated as a referral. So when we're talking about those unexcused absences, those are chronic absences.
Okay.
So those are kiddos from Ms. Crystal's great. So every time a letter goes out, it generates a referral. So there's documentation in our system that parents have been notified.
Okay.
And then part of the second piece that she does is she schedules our attendance meetings for us. So we regularly meet. I know our students that are either going to maybe unfortunately having to go to court, or I've met with those families, we've identified barriers. So sometimes it's transportation, sometimes it's as simple as getting a kiddo an alarm. But Mr. B and I make those meetings, and sometimes it's hard to get those families in, but Ms. Crystal does an amazing job of continuing to communicate, call, all of those pieces. So I think we've got a pretty, I know we have an amazing system in terms of this. So that, but completely agree. Probably we have those 1 or 2 absences here and there, but that data is chronic absence.
If a student misses 2 days, a month,
Mhm.
they missed a month of school.
Yeah.
20 days is
Yeah.
basically a month. So
Yeah.
2 days a month doesn't sound like a lot,
Mhm.
but you add that up and now I've missed a month of school.
Right. Okay. Um. Then the one thing that I also saw, and this is just, once again, this is my non-educational mindset looking through this. You know, specifically, we can apply this across all aspects of all schooling, but I look at SPED in particular, right? And once again, we look at the 10% improvement. Okay. We've had countless conversations of the amount of paras that are being brought in, the amount of SPED resources that are being brought in. And when I see a 10% improvement, while I see that, like it's an improvement. However, at the same time, we're bringing in all these support plans and saying in place, and is that what we're saying? Is that we're expecting with all of these resources that we're bringing in that the best we can do is 10%? I guess I'm looking for like a stretch goal, so to speak, that we can look back at and be realistic, because still we're getting to a point where only the goal is that, you know, I'll say this in a negative format to frame it well. The goal is that 7 out of 10 kids won't be on track. And that's where I would challenge that, is because we're bringing in all these resources, and I'm hoping, once again, I'm not the professional on how the best way to utilize and push and right, as administrators yourselves, right? The educator's job is to push and motivate and educate the students, whereas yours is to push, educate, and motivate, you know, the staff as well. And that leads directly into the PLCs, whereas it was that PLCs, like, people just didn't know what a good PLC looked like. How do we prevent that from happening again in the future? Because I don't know how the middle school, right? Like I said, I'm going to try to attend PLCs upcoming here to learn more about them and everything. But how is the middle school PLCs program compared to other schools in the district? And is the concept of a PLC dramatically different from grade to grade?
So to be totally transparent with you, how did it get this way?
Mhm.
Without like making an excuse about anything. But over the last 10 years, I had to decide what were we as a middle school going to focus on? What was I going to do?
Mhm.
Bringing in somebody like Rachel, who has an expertise in special education, and the meetings and the things that they've been talking about, looking at data with the special education department. That's going to improve that from me kind of just saying, okay, I got to just focus on the big discipline things, because that's all I can do right now.
Mhm.
And again, nobody's fault. I'm not singling out anybody or putting blame on anything, but that was the last 10 years. There's been a lot of catch up that we have to do as a middle school to kind of get us into par in our PLCs, and really teachers looking at data, having that focus on student learning. Yes, there is. And the one thing that I will always be transparent, and yeah, we struggled with that over the last 10 years for sure. And so having somebody with a special ed expertise and an ELA expertise, those things are changing, and we are seeing that change happen. From September to now, it has changed. And so are we going to see a 50% growth over the next year? No, that's not realistic in the education world. And in the business world, when you make goals about, I got to sell this many more products, and you don't do it, well, you're dealing with a product. And when you're dealing with a 12-year-old mind or a 13-year-old mind, there's a lot more than just, hey, you got to raise your score by 50% or.
Right, understood. And that's where I guess I'm leaning more on the, once again, expertise within there, whereas I believe I mentioned it at the beginning of the board meeting last time, whereas completely understanding that an educator's job is in no way, shape, or form easy. Nobody is saying that. I just want to make sure that everybody is right. The community does depend on the school district to educate their children and to prepare them to be ready. And I guarantee you, right? I'm not a teacher. Like, there's and so there's a lot of that goes into it. The final part that I would do just as a challenge as well is be extremely prescriptive, right? This is, you know, if you go into the business, right, this is your business. You are running this school to make people successful. Having that master plan and knowing who you need to ask for what. Right, you mentioned that 5% of the school makes the perception. Like, I get that, but I struggle to see the correlation of how bad perception affects teaching effectiveness. Like,
I didn't want to tie that to teaching effectiveness at all. I just know that the community has a reputation, or the middle school has a reputation with the community. And that 5 to 10%, oh, don't bring your kid to the middle school. The middle school, it's just full of harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Those are the ancillary things that are.
So, and I guess that my ask there would be, you know, once again, nothing that has to be actioned on tonight, but, you know, emails, phone, whatever, something, you know, there's a grand scheme, there's a big picture. If any of us have a board, I'm going to volunteer the board because we're in these positions for a reason, right? Like, email us, ask us, right? Be prescriptive, right? I say the outrageous ask. But going back to Dr. Middleton's thing, right? The board is effectively your patient that's saying, I want to be as healthy as we possibly can. And we're looking to you for guidance. And so guide us, right? Tell us, we need this, we need that, but we don't have the time to do this. We don't have the funding to do this. We don't have, right? It allow us to see that picture wholeheartedly so then we can help you in those decisions.
Appreciate it. Okay, well, thank you.
Yep.
It took a little bit longer than 15 minutes. Sorry. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
All right, next is the business report prepared by Marshall Cruz.
So not presenting, just kind of opening up for questions, maybe highlighting a couple of things. We did not include the updated revenue report yet, or the updated expenditures coming into the year. Plan on doing that next board report. We just got apportionment at the end of last week, so haven't had a chance to really dig into it that much yet. So we'll be putting together a nice estimate about end of year expenditures, end of year revenue for the next board report. Some highlights from this board report is that we did get transitional kindergarten up and running. And because of that and some other growth in the district, we are actually up, I think, close to 30 students over our last count. We expect that number to hold or even go up a little bit more for the rest of the year. So that'll help us with some additional revenue for the rest of the year. Our general fund balance is hovering right around -$1 million. It'll be at that level probably for January, February, and March. It'll bounce up to the positive in April, and it'll probably drop back down negative in June. This year especially is more backloaded with revenue than normal years. As our budget grows, as our levy grows, as our safety net may grow, we have probably nearly 20% of our entire revenue will come in the last 2 months of the school year, whereas we've probably spent 90%, 85% of our expenditures are done by July. And then in July and August, we get 28% of our revenue will come in. So again, the importance of having a fund balance that is, $2.5 million or so, so that you don't go negative and you can stomach those ebbs and flows of how the state funds us during the school year. I did include a gap analysis. It's towards the fifth slide or so. It talks about some low-hanging, easily identified things that are causing us to be a little off track this year. Paraeducator costs are up when we were hoping to reduce them to a more normalized level. Health services are up significantly. We're having to have a nurse in every school and a health attendant. In the past, we were able to have maybe 2 district-wide nurses and health attendants, or even people that were half-time health attendant, half-time secretary. Our CTE is underfunded this year by about $300,000 to $400,000. That's in large part due to where a lot of our CTE teachers fall on the pay scale. They are some of the most experienced teachers in our district, and they also get extended days for CTE. So they're very expensive teachers, and our class sizes could be more optimized in those areas. And special education costs need to rise. We thought we had some ways to reduce those costs this year, but they're higher than we had hoped for. We have additional needs for psychologists. We're almost operating with 3 full-time psychologists now instead of 2.4. And student needs through IEPs continue to grow. As we were talking about paraeducators and student growth and all those things, I just had the realization sitting there that it's really odd how the federal government came in to help schools, providing a bunch of money during the pandemic when we were kind of shutting down and not able to operate the way we were, but there's no money for when we came back to school, and all of our students need all these extra supports. There was funding to help us weather this storm, but there's no real funding to help us repair the damage. And so we got used to having some additional supports during the pandemic because of the ESSER funds we had. And it's really hard to dial back those supports when the needs are actually probably even greater, because you're trying to make the repairs of what happened during COVID. And I guess that's for all open for questions.
Ford, do you have questions?
Really quick. So you mentioned so thank you for the gap analysis. That's very helpful. When I'm looking at the CTE underfunded, so you mentioned the teachers are at the top of the pay scale. Understanding, I remember you mentioning CTE classes are funded by enrollment, similar to how the school works as well. Is it possible, is it just that they're so small, that's where the $300,000 to $400,000 gap is? Or is it that even with a healthy CTE class size, we still have teachers that are at the top of the pay, and CTE actually doesn't quite fund itself?
That's definitely the case. I mean, so CTE is funded at, I think, 24 students per class, whereas a regular class is funded at 28.
Mm-hmm.
So you do get to generate, for every, 100 teachers, you get to generate about one, or every 100 students, you get to generate about 1 extra staff member.
Okay.
But you also are giving them, there's some CTE requirements. They have to run clubs and extracurricular activities as a teacher. And those require getting paid for extra days. So some of our teachers require 15 to 20 extra days of pay. So when you're at the top of the pay scale, you're getting extra days, and the state's only giving you $82,000 to fund that teacher, and it may be costing $130,000. And it's hard to offset even with class size. I mean, I think we may be, class size helps. We should be targeting at least 24 in every class to meet the state funding model. And we certainly have classes that are less than that.
Do we have a reason as to why I mean, you might not know that, but why those class sizes are so small? Is it because of the offering or because? Do we know?
We've kind of started conversations about that, and I think probably the high school would probably go into more in depth on that, but I think we have maybe a few too many choices that are similar. So a student is picking between two similar choices, and that might, maybe not having two similar choices would help.
And then I'm just guessing that the jump in enrollment in kindergarten is our transitional kindergarten.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I know.
Hey, Marshall, couple things. First question, I'm not sure that you can fully answer, maybe I have to look down at Dr. Milton, but I noticed your note that, and obviously the chart, that most of our growth is in Crossroads. And when I look at our 22-23 budget comparative to our actual enrollment in the high school, 10th grade, we were budgeted at 165, there's 152, a little down. 11th, we budgeted 145, there's only 109 in the 11th grade class, and we budgeted 90 seniors, and we're down 81. So I guess my question is, where are those students coming from Crossroads? Because it looks like they're coming from high school. Is that what's happening?
Yes.
Oftentimes that occurs, yes.
We did a bit of a dive into that about a month and a half ago, and we had about 50 students from the high school moved to Crossroads. We had about 50 students from the high school who would have been high schools this year who went elsewhere for whatever reason, moved out of state, and we had about 30 that came in
From another district or something like that. So
moved into the area or choice transferred in. I know we had 4 kids just this last just starting in February, choice transfer into the high school.
So I'm listening to your numbers. Sounds like the majority are coming from high school. Is that what I just heard?
Yeah, and we're getting Crossroads kids from Lake Stevens are coming over, but you know, we're having a lot of kids that have severe credit deficiencies that are ending up going over to Crossroads from high school.
Got it. And I guess I completely understand that Crossroads is a good place for kids that are credit deficient. But I guess one conversation that I've never had from a board level is, what is our capacity at Crossroads? Crossroads is our oldest building, right? It is, I mean, what's the number that we have there? And then at what point are we cutting off our nose to spite our face? What I mean by that is, at what point is the transition of kids from the high school to Crossroads so significant that now it makes the class sizes in high school so small that they're just no longer viable to run? So we're like, okay, I guess like we have to cut programs at the high school to support the transition to Crossroads. I guess, when do we look at, I guess, 2 things. When do we discuss a cap or some sort of limit of Crossroads just can't handle this? And then 2, when do we have a conversation of, okay, well, maybe the answer isn't to send a kid to Crossroads, which again is a great program to get credit deficient, but let's put some additional things into the high school so that we can get credit deficient kids that are in the high school up back to where they need to be.
Those are great questions, and these are all things we're having the exact same thoughts, like Marshall said, over the last month. We can't wait for Ms. McVeigh to come back, and because we want to have these conversations, we've already had conversations with the high school administration, say, you want this many teachers, you've got to keep more students at the high school. And you're right, we need to do more intervention there to keep them. I don't know why the sudden exodus. A lot of it is that credit deficiency, and it ties into the earlier presentation with 9th grade success and getting behind in credits. But I am with you on that. In terms of a cap, we're comfortable with 200 at Crossroads and how many at Open Doors?
50-ish at Open Doors.
So, sort of that 250 number, but I'd rather have 250 with more out of district coming in and keeping more of our own students at the high school. Those who need to come to Crossroads, great. Like you said, it is a great program. Two of my daughters went and that was the right spot for them, but I'd like us to have a little bit more at the high school for some support and intervention.
Yeah, because if I look at the budget, our budget was 195 at Crossroads and Open Doors, and right now we're basically 250. So we're, significantly over. And if you're saying 250 is the number, that's fine. But I guess, is it incumbent upon us as the educational leaders in this district, should we set a cap from a policy standpoint that says, okay, Crossroads cannot be bigger than this? That way, if a student is challenged, the high school knows, okay, well, Crossroads can't take any more people. We're going to have to figure it out here.
I think there is a philosophical discussion that needs to occur, whether Grand Falls School District wants to be the large alternative district. When you look at other like-sized districts, they might have a portable of 17 students total in their alternative program. And we do co-op with Lake Stevens. That's great. We do reach out to others. But we're either going to be the district that embraces that and let's set a number and that's our identity, or scale back to, okay, this is what we really can want to do and can handle. Because when we take on Lake Stevens and other districts, we take on their academic achievement. We have, again, I'm very proud of Crossroads and the 5th year graduation rate, but that impacts our 4th year or on-time graduation rate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I guess I'm looking at the board chair. I would appreciate potentially a study session to go deeper into this, because I think that we need to, because I mean, at this point, I mean, essentially, we're going to have to make this decision at some point, and I would rather do it now than later under extreme pressure, because the kids at Crossroads deserve adequate services and every ability to be able to graduate on time or as quickly as possible, and our resources are going to be stretched there, I think, if we get much bigger. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, Marshall, I saw that you lowered the expectation of the 5% fund balance down to 4.4. As you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. We were supposed to be at a 5% last year. We kicked it to this year. I feel extremely uncomfortable with kicking it again. What can we do, or what creative financing things can we do, or out of the box thinking things can we do to get back on track?
I think that might be a good place for a study session also. Just, I mean, there are potential things we can do. I mean, there's different ways to finance a couple of things. There's, we're going to have some enrollment boosts this year. We're going to go into next year with cuts in place rather than have a plan for cuts for next year. Like this last year, we went in with a plan. The plan is difficult to execute. We cannot go into next year without it already being executed. So we'll start the execution of the plan this year so that we have better confidence in our ability to execute the plan next year, because it will already be in motion.
Well, I guess I would love a study session on that too, because I do not feel comfortable taking that to the next, because I mean, right now our December general fund balance is that correct, negative $981,000.
Yeah, and it's going to be that in January, it's going to be that in February, it's going to be that in March, and then it'll bounce back probably to positive $600,000 in April, and then it'll go negative in May, negative in June, and then like I said, we get 28% of our revenue will come in July and August, with maybe 5% of our expenditures.
and I'll talk more about this at my NSBA conference, but there's a specific, there's a method to my madness board. At the NSBA, they had economists come and present to us, and they talked about forecasting and stuff like that, and they produced some information related to states and states different in reliance on sales tax for funding. Spoiler alert, Washington is at, we have a supreme, actually, we're the 10th highest reliance on sales tax for education funding. 69% approximately of the money that we get comes directly from state funding. And the state as a whole only has approximately a 4% fund balance. So they are forecasting a deep recession. In fact, they called 24-25 the year of bloodletting. That was the term that they used. They said that there's going to be a deep inflation. All the forecasts say in 24-25, which for states like us that have a high reliance on sales tax, well, things are more expensive and people aren't buying almost things, then that means the system is going to have less money, which means potentially they're going to be looking at providing us less money. And they said that you want to go into that year as strong as possible with as much money in the bank as possible. So taking this another year and saying the 23-24, we're going to be at 5, and now we're going to in the 24, we're going to a year before this, does not make me feel comfortable at all. They said you want to be as close to 10% as possible. So I'll talk more about that later, but we've got to figure it out, because again, I would rather make hard decisions now with time than later with under pressure and no time. So the only other thing I had, hold on, sorry, go back to your slide here. Where was it? Nope. Safety net. You said that is we're providing that's due in March. Is that what I saw?
Yeah, the special ed department started working on that this month, so we should have probably a much better estimate on what to expect between safety net and community impact, probably by our March business report.
Okay. And so in the numbers that you're showing now, are you factoring some?
I'm factoring in a total of $1 million for the combination of safety net and community impact, which is a reduction from last year.
And do we think safety net's going to be above 1 million, or do we think it's going to be below? Because obviously if it's 500,000, well, then right off, even if we got all 500, we have an issue.
I think it's going to be in my off the back of a napkin estimate. It's going to safety net's going to be around $800,000 to $900,000. Community impact will probably be around $200,000 to $300,000.
Okay. That's all I have.
All right, now I have to go back to my question. Oh, some of them Carl already had. So I'm looking mostly at the gap analysis. I'll just boil it down to explain it like I'm 5, because at the end of the day, it looks like we're about 250 students above budget. But now we're projected at 4.4. So we're less than 5%, but we have 250 students above budget.
I think we have 49 students above budget.
Did I look at it? Well, okay, we're 49. I guess I was looking at some other row, but even at 49 students above budget, we're coming in below budget. And it looks like you're saying that's because the CTE teachers are getting 15 extra days for their clubs and their highest pay.
So what I identified as contributors is that we intended to reduce the cost of paraeducators. We're not able to. Instead, we increased them by $280. We intended to. We had no idea that we'd have the nursing needs this year that we have, and that we would have to rely on agencies. So that's costing us $300,000 more than what we expected. And we knew that we were gonna have a drop in CTE funding, but we didn't know exactly what the impact of that would be. And so that is $400,000 that we're gonna have to backfill out of our general fund, which normally we don't have to do. And then special education costs are higher due to IEP needs and the extra 0.6 of a psych. Those were higher than we expected in our budget. So those are contributing. The enrollment would have given us about $500,000 extra. It ended up, because of the way CTE worked, it ended up giving us exactly about $200,000 extra in revenue for the year. And we had to hire an extra kindergarten teacher. We had to hire an extra fourth grade teacher. So really the way that the students landed at the grade schools kind of offset our ability to experience that revenue.
So actually, I guess great minds think alike, because when Carl mentioned the study session, that was actually in my notes. I think that we've been talking about special ed and the costs there, the rising costs, and trying to understand and wrap our heads around that since October. And I think that as part of that conversation that goes with that finance and getting the fund balance to 5% and creative kind of things, I think it's important that we understand where we are and where the money's spending right now, right? Not only, so I do think that a study session is important when it comes to the finance and what it will take to turn us back toward 5% for this year and as part of planning forward, as well as, of course, the cap for crossroads. I think that's another conversation. Oh yeah, by the way, I do appreciate the 30, 60, 90. I noticed it at the very end. Maybe we could put it at the top for.
Okay, I just felt like that was a good.
Yeah, don't bury the lead. Yes, don't bury the lead.
Okay.
Anyway, no, I appreciated that. I was like, hey, put it in there. I just want to call that out. All right, I mean, there's other questions. I'll get with you. I'll send it in an email.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talk to everybody
Yep.
offline all the time, so feel free.
Yep. Yeah, there's nothing major. My biggest thing was that we sort of explain out. I know that's what the gap is, but just a little more information on that. All right, board, any other questions for Marshall? Okay, thank you, Marshall.
Thank you.
All right, next is the NSBA Advocacy Institute report.
Yeah, I'll go through this quick more because I know it's a long night. We still have a full agenda ahead of us, but I attended NSBA in Washington, DC. NSBA, thank you. It's the National School Board Association. It's essentially an annual convention of nationwide of all the boards from every state. And the intent of it was to obviously talk about, provide us some learnings and growth as far as knowledge and ability, and also to spend a day at the Capitol speaking with our legislators here in our legislators from Washington and Washington, DC. I think the conference, it was great. I really enjoyed learning about the parent piece that we're going to talk about later on in the and what the national PTA organization has been doing and some of the data that they have related to that. Obviously, the discussion related to school finance and the concerns that they signaled there. Just to talk about that real quick again. Washington State is number 10 on reliance on sales tax for school funding. 69% of what we get from sales tax goes directly there, and there really isn't any money in the bank to weather any storms in Washington State. So a deep inflationary period or downturn in the economy would typically hit us extremely hard as a state. And I had breakouts with other members from Washington State that went there, and some had varying thoughts. Some thought that was a huge thing, maybe not so much, based upon some of the requirements of the state to their paramount duty to fund education and those types of things, but that doesn't necessarily have a dollar figure attached to it. So I guess that's debatable. So but just real quick to kind of lean into the discussions that we had, I was able to meet personally with Kim Schreier, our representative, as well as Susan Delbini's aide. Susan Delbini doesn't represent us anymore, but she used to. So, I was in the group that also met with Senator Cantwell, who met with us directly and actually gave us, it was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting, and she gave us an hour. A lot of good information there. One of the things that became extremely clear to me when I reached out, I introduced myself, Carl from Granite Falls. They said, Granite Falls? I'm like, yeah, Granite Falls. Small town, Everett. They had no idea who we were or where we were, which I think is an issue, a significant issue. So was able to speak specifically during those meetings about two big things that we were hoping that the federal government does meet their actually requirements for funding on special education. They currently funded about 17–18%, and they're supposed to pay 40% of it. And then universal meals for all. The special education funding piece has been talked about for years. Universal meals is kind of a new thing. It felt like there was more potential to get universal meals through this legislative session than some increase in funding. But the other big thing, and I talked to Dr. Middleton about this, I was actually impressed that, Kim Schreier specifically, as well as Senator Cantwell, both said, invite me out to Grand Falls and I'll come in. And they gave me their card and they said, if we're in town, we have something going, I'd love to come out. And I think that's an offer I'd love to take them up on, to invite them out because they had no idea who we are or what we do. I think that would be great for us, as well as I had the best conversations actually with their legislative aides, which are, these 20-something-year-olds fresh out of college, poli-sci degrees, big eyes, wanting to change the world, working in Washington, D.C. And actually, all of them were from Washington State, one from Seattle, one from Walla Walla, and one from, I want to say Kennewick or something like that. And they offered too. They're like, hey, if you've got an AP politics class or something like that, I come home for the holidays, why don't you invite me? So I talked to Dr. Middleton about that and got their cards, and I think that would be a really great thing to invite them to come out, because we might have some kids here that have that type of desire, and that's certainly something, a contact that we can put in front of them, of someone who's actually doing that work. So it was definitely a significant expense to send me there, but I think overall it was good. I appreciate the board's trust to be able to represent Granite Falls in that, and I'm hopeful that some positive comes out of it. So, any questions?
Thank you. All right, next we have board reports. WIAA.
No updates for tonight.
Okay, and I'm gonna go with community report.
I don't have anything tonight.
And the ledge report.
Yeah, I guess I'll say this real quick. So yesterday I testified against House Bill, was it 15? Do you remember?
5257?
5257, which is a good bill in theory, but a bill that requires a mandatory 45 minutes of recess in kindergarten. I think the more recess, the better. The only challenge is it's mandated. You can't break it up. No flexibility, 45 minutes. And Dr. Milton helped me with some concerns related to staffing and potential opener for collective bargaining and all of that stuff, because of course there's no money tied to the requirement. So yeah, like a solid 45 minutes, figure it out, make it happen, minimum 45. Like literally no wiggle room. So the question we ask is, well, what if it's raining outside? Or what if tons of different questions. And what if it's a PLC day and it's a half day, right? And so actually, the sponsor for it is Sam Lowe, our representative in the 39th, who, by the way, I'll talk more about him in a second, but great guy, super accessible. And I reached out to him, even gave him a heads up and said, hey, I'm not testifying no, but I'm testifying other, because here's our concerns. And he seemed open to hear them. So the concern is that this seems like it has legs. It's already come out of the committee. It seems like it could happen. So I testified other on that, and then some other things we'll share here in a second. So question. Okay, sorry.
All right.
Yes, so
No, it's still on this time. All right. So next item 4A, items from the floor. All right, did you sign up to speak?
I didn't.
Would you like to speak? I'm sorry. You can speak now. If you don't mind just introducing yourself. Oh, sorry, I'm still in your thunder.
Yeah.
Ex-president.
I appreciate it. Told me one time, he says, if it lasts any longer than 11 minutes, go ahead and leave the contribution.
You might
The name
introduce-
Charvet, ring the bell. CHARVET.
No.
Okay. I'm here because, not necessarily for myself, but for my company.
You mind introducing yourself real quick?
Well,
Sorry.
James Charvet.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, I sent in an application to become a substitute teacher. And nothing happened. Let me just give you this, and that'll take up 3 minutes. So. Fine.
Thank you.
And these are all my cheat notes, so we'll read fast.
You can keep it.
You get one.
It's okay.
Would you mind standing at the podium just
Oh,
because we're streaming on YouTube? In case anybody,
You might want to read the full thing.
I don't have the rule thing. There is, normally there's something that we read and maybe I have it on the agenda here. So I'm not in my usual spot. Yeah, let me find it. Sorry. Items from the floor. Here it is. Okay, so I just have to. What's that? All right, when called forward,
Can you read it?
is it this one? Or
Yeah, you want me to help you?
I just don't know if I'm supposed to read the whole thing because I brought the wrong glasses. Okay. Any member of the public may attend board meetings, including individuals who do not live within the district. The board may allow a speaker to take up to 5 minutes. If a group is present and would like to, one spokesperson, an individual may be allotted up to 10 minutes. When called forward, individuals will identify themselves and proceed to make comments within the time limits established. The board is not obligated to respond to questions or challenges made during public comment period, and the board's silence will not signal agreement or endorsement of the speaker's remarks. The board may control the time, place, and manner of public comment, and the chair may terminate an individual statement when the allotted time has passed and may interrupt a speaker to require the same standard of civility that the board imposes on itself. Examples include libelous or slanderous, unwarranted invasion of privacy, obscene or indecent pursuit of Federal Communications Act, inciting an unlawful act on school premises or violating a lawful school regulation, and creating material or substantial disruption of an orderly meeting. The board as a whole has the final decision in determining the appropriateness of such rulings and can maintain order by removing those who are disruptive. However, the board recognizes the distinction between uncivil discourse, which it will not tolerate, and comments about the board, district, and or staff that are negative yet still civil in nature, and will exercise its authority to maintain order in a content neutral manner.
Sorry about that, James. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm a driver's ed instructor and I'm also working with Grand Falls here. This is my second year. You read my resume. I think the stickler is that I sent in a resume requesting that I become sublist.
Mhm.
I was asked by actually one teacher and one administrator, and I don't know who the administrator was, so forgive me. Anyway, they asked me, said, hey, you're a teacher? I said, yeah. I said, well, sign up to be a sub. And I said, okay. So I turned in my resume. And it got rejected. Didn't get rejected, it just sat. And I waited and waited and waited for the excitement. It didn't show up. So I went to go see her and I gave you information that we had talked about. So I'm asking, why didn't the process work as far as I sent one to the principal and I sent one to the school board and I sent one to the superintendent, and nobody responded. And everybody denies or they say they didn't receive it. So somebody in a chain of links is intercepting these and making a decision on their own. Because the conversation that I got with Chris wasn't hot and heated or anything, but she was very defiant in saying that this is a resume. And I looked up the definition of a resume. It says a brief account of work, experiences, and qualifications. And I underlined the word brief. And I've been on your side of the table before, and I've interviewed a lot of people. And I know going through the 1-2 pages of information, you would just give me the facts, just tell me what you want. So I'm here not only for myself, but my daughter, she also turned in a resume. Because Chris's big thing was, this is not a resume format. So I worked with my daughter to do a resume and she turned it in and never got a response. And she suffered from COVID, but she suffered in the later stage of it. So everybody was through with it and she got it. So she got out of the workforce and she wants to be back into the workforce. And I guess with all of my notes and everything here, all I'm asking is that take a look at her resume if it did show, or else have her send another one and allow her at least the courtesy of being in response. She's in a very depressive state right now because she's been rejected. And all she wants to do is to get a job and work. And she asked to be able to, her resume was for food service, you know, and that was it. And I talked to some of the people in food service and they said they definitely need people. They said they're always looking for people. And I've talked to some teachers here that said, yeah, we're looking for subs because we've got teachers that are floaters, we call them at Snohomish, that this is their prep time, so they have to float in and teach for another teacher during their prep time. And they got really tired of that. So I guess my appeal is, you know, give her a chance to look at that resume. For myself, I'm working out of Snohomish now, or Monroe, as a driver's ed instructor. So I'm not here begging for a job. My intent was to come and say, hey, glad to be a sub. If I can help you in any way, I'm glad to. I'm not trying to take anybody else's job. And that's the same way I took it as teaching here at Granite Falls and talking to Tony. I said, Tony, I don't want to take somebody else's job. If you need me, give me a call. And he scheduled me and all, thank goodness. Out. So anyway, I don't want to take up 10 minutes, but I just want to get a fair share.
Madam Chair, may I address? We typically don't respond to comments, but I feel like I want to. I did receive your resume and walked down to human resources and it sounds like there might be 1 or 2 steps missing, but sitting in the audience is our Director of Human Resources. I think if you could connect tonight, you know, we could go through what those missing steps are and for both you and your daughter, we certainly do want subs. And I know you're busy now, but there might become a time when you're available. So
see, I'm teaching here Fridays, Mondays, and Friday, Monday, and Saturday. So if I'm going to be here Friday and Monday, and they need a sub, I might as well just be here for the full day and then teach driver's ed after that, rather than just stay off here.
So Jennifer Harmon is our HR director in the blue coats, and so maybe connect tonight and thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
hey, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your service too.
Can you promise me this? That I can go home and tell my daughter that you're actually gonna do something?
Yeah, I think right now you could have a conversation on what the next steps that are needed.
You can say relevant at least, tell her why, and then.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for your service, by the way, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Unfinished business 5A, second reading to adopt policy 3117, students in or released from institutional education facility. Any discussion?
I gotta get there, although I don't think I have any. So.
No.
This is a new policy that we got.
Last time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from WASDA.
Yeah,
Brand new to us.
directly from WASDA, so.
I make a motion that we approve the second reading of policy 3117, students in or released from an instructional education facility.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Second reading to amend policy 1220, board officer and duties of board members. Discussion.
The only thing I think we discussed, we were gonna make a different policy to add WIA and community liaison,
Yes,
because that wasn't in there.
Yeah, does WASDA not have standard language for that yet? Or
actually, so Dr. M actually, is her name Abigail?
Abigail, yeah.
Yeah, so Dr. M actually emailed the WASDA rep, Abigail West.
Right.
Yeah,
And she thought, yeah, we probably ought to do that because roles have evolved. So they were going to start working on model policy for those.
Okay.
I don't think that it's like dire that we have it in there, but once they have that in there, then we can
Right.
revise.
yeah, it's within the last, I want to say week and a half that we heard back from her.
Okay.
So she said that she would reach out and see what other people are doing, kind of look at creating a model policy for that.
Okay.
So, any other discussion?
I make a motion that we accept the second reading to amend policy 1220, board officer and duties of board member.
I'll second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
5C, second reading to amend policy 1225, school director legislative program. Discussion.
Well, since I'm doing the job, I guess I'll make a motion that we approve the second reading of policy 1225, legislative, school director, legislative representative program.
I will second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
5D, second reading, 5010, non-discrimination and affirmative action. Any discussion?
I make a motion that we approve policy 5010, the second reading of policy 5010, non-discriminatory affirmative action.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, new business 6A, adoption of proposed 23-24 school district calendar discussion.
Dr. M, so
Notes.
cliff notes on this.
I have two things, but they're pretty quick, I think.
Like what are like the big changes or cliff notes on this?
Yeah. This year, we had one additional professional learning day that we got a waiver for. So we had 174 instructional days. This calendar has 175 instructional days. So there are 4 days that are parent conferences, 2 in the fall, 2 in the spring, and then 1 professional learning day in October.
Is that, oh, no. So is this saying no school the day before Thanksgiving?
Half day.
Is it
It's a
half day?
Yeah, the white, I believe is a half.
Oh, white is half day.
Yeah, no school.
Oh, I was all excited for a minute. Okay.
So how does this equate to our minimum like seat times and stuff like that? Is it right on the nose, no, meaning one snow day we're behind?
No, I don't know the exact hours, but, you know, it would be 1 or 2 days. You know, extra hours. It's similar to this year.
So if there aren't any other questions, I have two. One of them is normally there's a sped retreat prior to School of Rock. We didn't do it this year, but historically that's been a thing. I didn't notice it on the calendar. It's generally like a 1 day for the special education department to talk about all the new, whatever the new changes or requirements are that are for them while they also attend School of Rock, but are those
Right.
being combined? Or
Not,
is that-
no, not necessarily. I don't know if we've actually put that on this calendar.
It wasn't this year, but historically
Okay.
it's been a thing, so I didn't
Yeah.
notice it, so I didn't know if we're moving away from it or.
No, I'm
Okay, we can figure that one out. Then when it comes to the conferences in November of 2023, they're Wednesday, Thursday, and then come back 2 days off, and then we come back on Friday and go to
Right.
school. That seems to me like it will be a throwaway day, the day after conferences and before the weekends. Is there a chance we could either move, I'm sure the teachers would cheer if we moved to the conferences to Monday, Tuesday, because then they wouldn't have the kids on Halloween. Or shifted it to Thursday.
there's
Friday.
a strong desire to have the day after Halloween.
Oh, I'm sure that.
And that can be a throwaway.
Usually, that day is already an 80-minute early release, so if we. Monday, Tuesday, and the kids, because they usually do like the lower elementary school usually do the Harvard Festival like on Friday evening or whatever.
Right.
So I'm just trying to not make that Friday a throwaway day, but if we
Tuesday,
move it over so that Monday, Tuesday.
Wednesday, it still encapsulates Halloween. I don't know. I mean, I think it's hard. I mean, 2 days is always, you're gonna have 1 day on one side.
Yep.
And then if you tack it on to, if you tack it on to Thursday, Friday in and of itself, I think you might have trouble getting community involvement
Right. I would agree with that too.
with parent teacher conferences on Friday. That'd just be, I thought. So I would think either.
You're saying that Monday, I guess
I'd say Tuesday, Wednesday, if we were to change it, just to maintain that, the Halloween approach as well. Or the day after Halloween, I guess I should say.
So they would come to school for only Monday and then have 2 days off?
Yeah, I mean. We also run the risk.
Thought was if we do Monday, Tuesday off, coming back all sugared up on the day after Halloween, it's an early release, so it's already at least a short day.
Yeah, but then aren't we removing,
Throw away at the end of the week.
if we don't have Wednesday on there, aren't we removing a full day of educational time? Because this time we're removing Wednesday as an educational day, which is an early release day. If we move it to Monday, Tuesday, we're keeping the short day, but we're removing 2 full days instead of just 1 full day.
It's a fair point. I don't know. I just, when I see it colored in, when it's a visual like that, it looks to me like, what exactly is any teacher gonna do the day after two days off for conference and before 2 day
Yeah.
weekend? What are they gonna accomplish that day? Historically, I think the answer is Disney movies, but I could be wrong. And I'm slightly jaded, but
Hopefully not.
I don't know. Your thoughts?
I'm fine.
Tuesday, Wednesday would work, I think, I don't know.
What if you split it up on a Monday, like you did a half day Monday, a half day Tuesday, and then the full day Wednesday? Would you do that?
We've talked about that, and I remember it had something to do with paying paras or something for that day and being able
I guess
to
I
reimburse.
just don't want to go into it with the assumption that work's not going to get done, right? Like, I think we need to go into it with the assumption that if it's a full day of education, like, they should be doing something. So
I'm being very realistic as a mom who's had 6 children go through this district as to what happens on a Friday.
I think if the straw poll is, we don't like that, I need to take it back to the calendar committee.
That's what I was gonna say, and I don't disagree with any
Calendar
discussion.
committee.
Yeah, but I mean, this is, I wouldn't, the machinations, I'm sure Dr. Mess go through to get to even to this point, right? With the unions and the CV and all of that stuff, and, you know, I would venture to say they probably even already released this calendar, and they're like, oh, it's done. And I'm not saying that we should negate our authority, that we're the end of the road, but, is that, I guess the question that I'm asking, and I'm okay with whatever the consensus of the board is, are we so sure that that's going to be a non-productive day that we want to go through all of the machinations to change it? Does that create a better situation for us? Because I don't disagree with what Director Ledoux is saying, that I mean, could education happen? Sure. But I get your point of, but will it? Could it? Yes. Will it? Maybe not. I don't, is that significant enough for us to really send him down that path? But I will go with whatever the consensus of the board is.
We'll just leave that, but maybe add School of Rock if that's really a thing, or not School of Rock, but the SPED day. I will leave it, but I will leave it with the comment. Hopefully you laugh, but you know that I'm telling the truth.
I have
Children in this district
I have one ad.
don't do anything on days like that, nothing. They like clean out their notebook or something. They do nothing.
I have one request ad that doesn't require you to go to the calendar committee. I don't think, Dr. M. Could we add board meetings to that? Just so that it's clear on what the board meetings are, maybe we get more participation, but also it's not conflicting with other things that are being scheduled.
Add more days.
Add the board meeting days to it.
Sure, yeah, that would
Just as a, I mean, because this goes out, this is what's going to go out to parents, right? Right. So if parents want to come to board meetings, it's right there on their calendar. If someone's scheduling something, it doesn't conflict with board meeting day. To me, it's just more information.
Yeah, this is one source, and then of course we have on the web where everything is put on there.
But my kids' calendars are always taped on my wall in my office.
This is, but this is, you're basically saying, like, if you're looking through your iPhone, this is calendar from this email address. There's another calendar from another email address. Parents are going to get the copied and pasted version together. This is just for the educational professionals to like look and say like, okay, we know that these are our early release days. This is where we're, doing X, Y, Z. If I'm understanding you correctly, right, Dr. Middleton? Or is this like copy and pasted, sent out to parents?
This is the basic holiday conference calendar that does get pasted on the refrigerator.
Okay.
But you are going to get also either an email or hard copy of school calendars, and then we have our own district calendar. I guess the question is, where does it stop? I mean, do we add the 4 parent forums onto this that we have? And
Good point.
Yeah.
The reason I bring it up, and probably maybe she agrees with this or she doesn't, but one of the things I always hear, like when there's a hubbub or something, when's the next board meeting? I would love to hear, check your calendar on your
Yeah.
refrigerator.
Well, and
It's on there.
even if this.
I'm angry. I'm
only-
coming down to the next board meeting. Okay, it's hard.
Even if this only went out to teachers and staff, I'd like them in these seats too, so, why not?
I mean, if it's a big deal, I'm totally willing to back off, but I thought it's in the document, you just put it, highlight it a different color and and away we go.
Hot pink.
But if it's a big deal, I'm looking at Melanie and she hasn't made eye contact with me. So.
Or like, or Carl, could there be like the meeting halfway and there's a footnote and an asterisk?
Yeah.
Like,
Footnote, yeah.
Second and fourth Wednesdays of each month.
No, absolutely. Only thing is obviously in, I think, June, July, August, I think you only have one.
Right.
But if there's a way to do that, yeah. that more, I'm just a more information is better than less information type of thing, but.
Yeah, answer, well, I guess,
Other discussions?
I was just gonna say, Dr. M, is this something that, like, if we have to go through those changes, I guess how pressing is you having an approved calendar tonight?
What we want to do is get out to staff and families. This is when we're starting. This is when the breaks are. This is when parent conferences are. So
Has this been approved by the FBA then?
yeah, this.
Okay, this is, okay, okay.
I would say.
Yeah.
Going to, I mean, we can
They're
always
already
make,
asking, parents are already asking for it. They wanted to plan all their vacations.
Yeah, they wanna-
So,
plan stuff and a board meeting is not gonna change that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my portion of the strong pull was just let it through.
yeah.
Sounds like that's what we were written. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the proposed 23-24 school district calendar as presented.
I will second.
Not with the addition of the board meeting or the,
It's, the straw poll says no.
okay, and not the sped retreat. All right, cool. Motion's been made. Was it seconded?
Yeah,
Right here. And seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, I lost my place.
Now we are at number B.
Oh, there we are, 6B, first reading to amend policy 2020, course design, selection, and adoption of instructional materials. Discussion?
This is an update. It was the policy.
I make a motion that we approve well, are we in discussion? I'm sorry, or rescind my motion?
Oh,
Is there any discussion?
I don't have a discussion.
All right,
No discussion.
then yes, you can make a
Okay.
motion.
Sorry, I make a motion that we approve policy, the first reading of policy 2020. Looks like, is that right? Policy 2020, course design, selection, adoption of instructional materials.
A second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I did notice there's I think instructional is not spelled right on there, but either way. The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Right, that's maybe just on the PDF, so, yeah. 6C model family school partnership policy from National PTA.
Yeah. Are you okay with me talking about this?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so it's a long night. I promise not to be verbose because I'm sure we're gonna have a long discussion on the next one. So this policy came out of my NSPA meeting with the National PTA Association, where they presented a ton of really good data that they had derived from a number of surveys that they've done nationally. And they provided also some real data on some school districts that had less than desirable educational outcomes, and how these districts, this was kind of the starting block for them to make some really unbelievable educational gains as they really forcefully went out to engage parents. I know this is something that Director Kincaid is extremely passionate about. So this is just me saying, hey, this seemed like a really good idea to me, just to hit the high points of what they talked about, or what the results of the survey said. They said that families overall share a positive rating of their school environment communication. However, there's still significant room for improvement and need to communicate effectively. Less than 3 out of 10 families said schools are doing an excellent job in that communication, and that was even less so in Milton High School. They also, one of the things that was most significantly impacting to me was that 21% of families felt that their teacher had the adequate training on how to communicate with families during PTA conferences and stuff like that, that they weren't, those conferences didn't provide them with the information that they needed to really replicate or extend the learning environment at home. You know, Director Ledoux, I think you kind of spoke to this initially. They're like, yeah, little Jimmy's doing fine. He's doing great. Okay, well, what can little Jimmy's got something I can do, right? Hey, help him with reading, or he's really, you know, his 10 times tables. So you could, you know, do some stuff with that. That they weren't being given information that would allow them to really assist the teacher at home. And so, I mean, only 21% felt that they had that information, so that was huge to me. Also, 4 out of 10 parents said, and I think that this was really kind of significant to me, that their child's school relied too much on technology like apps, texting, mass emails to communicate with parents and families. As someone, I had this conversation with Dr. M during my meeting. I get the calls every morning when a bus is out, and I haven't had a kid on the bus in a very long time. And one of the hubbubs I always hear on the school is that all of the calls that come out with that. That's one of the reasons, Dr. M, I asked you about with the attendance piece. Like, rather than relying on a letter or anything, like if someone picking up the phone and saying, hey, I'm Teresa, your kid's teacher. Why isn't Tim in class today? I think that we've really leaned way too far into that. And so that one-on-one communication piece would be great, as well as parents. One of the good things about COVID was that almost 9 out of 10 parents appreciated the flexibility of having parent-teacher conferences remotely. That allowed them to be able to multitask or those types of things. I've certainly sent all of mine remotely, and that's been fantastic. So so basically, my intent with putting forth this policy is not that necessarily we cut and paste this and make it a policy and away we go and then kind of forget it and it just rolls into the huge amount of policies and procedures that we have. Really, my intent is that we lean into this family school partnership, this starting block that's been here. I didn't want to just throw this on the agenda as a first reading. I really wanted to be a discussion topic so that we can talk about it, because we can make this whatever we want to, or not do it, or add stuff to it. I mean, one of the thoughts that I had is, one of the things I've heard clearly from Director Veach, maybe we put in here some sort of requirement for updating online reporting tools, Canvas, those types of things, because how can a parent, parent and again, extend the educational environment if they have no idea where their kid is from what they turned in or what they're ahead on or behind on or anything along those lines. So that's where I'm going. So I'll yield and let someone else talk.
All in all, seeing through this, and yes, getting more information, getting more involvement. The one-to-one is great. I think, yeah, definitely bows the discussion for the educators in terms of, right, if you have 10/10ths of yourself, right? I always use this exercise, and you're putting 1 towards X and 3 towards Y and 6 towards another. Like at some point you have to, steal from Peter to pay Paul, and making sure that we have enough, right? We were already doing so much with so little. I look at this and I say, yes, that would absolutely, once again, I'll use the term anecdotally, at the surface, I sit here and I say, how could this not be good? But I just want to make sure that when we're making these changes and alterations, that we're not doing them for feel goods, we're doing them for actual outcomes, right? So I don't know how we do that. But yes, I completely agree. And when I look at family engagement is I feel like it's a huge untapped market for us right now. If I'm speaking from that aspect, and family engagement in terms of, Carly's doing some great work with Dr. Manns on giving parents the tools on, hey, when you go home, here's a worksheet or something, or here's once a week, even in technology can be overused, but also Remind would be great to jump in and, hey, once a week, here's what we're doing. Here's the teacher's curriculum for the week. Do you have any ways of helping your child learn these things? Or I recommend giving your child 30 minutes of study time at home a weekend. If, they're at a point in high school that parents are no longer I don't know how to do this math.
but you do. So I'm at least gonna make sure that you're sitting down for 30 minutes and helping through it. So I'm sure there's a lot of wiggle room and play with this. All in all, though, yes, like I would wholeheartedly jump on it from the surface.
Well, as you know, this is my passion, so I was very excited about this. Dr. Mans and I are working with parents to come to listen to them and also find out how they want to be engaged with and involved from their point of view. So I think we are gathering a lot of really good data as far as that's concerned. And I like a lot of the wording in this. Some of the things that stand out to me is speaking to parents in a language or a way that they can understand and feel welcomed and stuff like that. And that's one thing I've been thinking about actually. Oftentimes here in our meetings and things like that, we talk about our family and parents as stakeholders. And to me, while true, it feels very businessy. And I know a lot of you come from very big businessy backgrounds. And so you start talking and it makes it feel like from a parent standpoint that her kids are a business. And I think we need to pay attention to the way we address parents and families to make them feel like we're a family and we're in this for their students, not as a business, but because we care about them and we want to see them grow. So I think that part in here where it talks about the language and the welcoming and that feeling of support is a huge factor that is something we should probably discuss as we come up with. I don't know if we're using this or coming up with our own, but I love this and I'm really excited that you're excited about it and all that kind of stuff. So
hold on. So, you know, obviously, board makes policy, right? We do the what and Dr. M does the how. So, I mean, we can bite this apple a number of different ways. We can, if this is something we want to move forward with, we can take this and add stuff to it. I'd be comfortable, just because I know you're passionate about this, Director Kincaid, with you just, if you wanted to take this and create something and then we can do I'm doing that if that's something that you're interested in doing.
yeah,
Just because there's stuff in here I don't think that we do, like back to school nights, and I'm not really sure what that is. I don't think we have open houses and stuff like that. We do. We do?
we do, yeah.
Okay.
They're just not, they're not necessarily called that. So, I mean, it could be worded differently to meet our needs.
Yeah. But there's some responsibility here for us as a district, as well as Dr. M with the annual family surveys and stuff like that, that I also want to make sure that we have to wrap our heads around how to do that. Because again, I think the worst thing that we can do is create something and then it's just words on paper that we never do anything with. So if you're comfortable with that, Director Kincaid, I'm okay with you taking this, running with it. Like I said, I just thought, oh, this is cool, and just put in front.
Yeah, I would love that actually.
Okay.
I would love to.
So do we need a motion on that? Chair, to basically let Director Kincaid come back to the board with or I think we could just nod our heads.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think we need a motion. I think we just put it on the agenda when you're ready.
Okay.
Just let me know and we'll add it to the agenda.
Okay.
Outstanding.
And now we are to 60, Resolution 22-2305. Senate Bill 5713, regionalization factors for concrete and Granite Falls.
Okay, is it okay if I stand at the thing? Okay, I promise I'll do as quick as I can. So I emailed you a video. So just real quick, okay, so just real quick, as I've talked to the board a number of times, regionalization, our sign regionalization means a significant negative impact to us. Regionalization factor, just for anyone who watches. The state assigns regionalization factors based on 3 terciles to school districts to what we receive for salary and benefits to basically adjust for relative cost of living in that district. So districts either get 0, 6, 12, or 18.
Since the beginning of regionalization in 1819, Granite Falls was assigned a 12% regionalization factor, which is interesting because essentially all of our surrounding districts say that directly touch us, other than 1 or 2, are assigned either an 18 or a 24% regionalization factor. The 24%, as you may notice, I didn't speak about before because it was added as a budget item that some districts got unclear on how they got that assigned 24% regionalization factor. So the impact to us is that we are directly adjacent. We touch 2 school districts that were assigned a 24% regionalization factor. In fact, we are one of 2 districts in the entire state of Washington that actually touch 2 school districts that have greater than a 10% regionalization factor. So the impact of that is that pretty obvious. We struggle to pay to adequately fund and pay comparative salaries to our competitors, because for every dollar we get, they get $1.50, or in some cases they get $2. So 23 this year, the state of Washington has to do what's called a rebase of the regionalization fund, which is basically where they evaluate all of the assigned regionalization funds and reassign them, for lack of a better explanation. So one of the things that I have been told, I've been on this crusade for a couple of years, is that this year during this rebase, they were going to right the wrong, that they solved the wrong that they had to not only to our districts, but other districts via this regionalization factor, and they were going to fix it. Well, unfortunately, it looks, the early indication is that there's not a whole lot of appetite to fix it, which isn't great because personally, I think it would be a travesty for us to be essentially stuck with a 12% regionalization factor for the next 4 years. So that brings us full circle to Senate Bill 5713, as Director Beach spoke about earlier. Our Senator, Senator Wagner, a huge thank you to Senator Wagner, actually has put forth a bill, Senate Bill 5713, that specifically, which would change the law. It is interesting how he wrote it because at the end of the language, it says, you know, here's the Terrace House, they get 18%, and he put comma, or Granite Falls or concrete school districts. So basically, no matter what happens, we'd always get that 18% factor, which is ballsy, and I like balls. So, but here's the challenge is that this bill has only until Friday to be heard, to have a scheduled hearing. If there's not a hearing by Friday, the bill essentially dies. So one of the things that I really appreciate Director Kincaid, I'm really trying hard to get the word out because we need to advocate as hard as we can in these next couple of days for a hearing to be scheduled on this bill, or for them to refer the bill to Senate Ways and Means Committee, which has a little bit longer lead time on when the cutoff is. And they also get to, and this is a budget bill, it's going to cost money. So this actually Ways and Means is actually where it should be initially. So here's the ask. The ask is that everyone that's listening to my voice, everyone that's here, that you contact the members of the Senate Education Committee and on Facebook. You can email me personally. I can get you the email addresses for those people and ask respectfully that a hearing be conducted on Bill 5713 before the Friday cutoff, or that they refer the bill to the Senate Ways and Means Committee. I did receive an email from Senator Wagner today, who said that he is also advocating with the chair of that committee to try to make this happen. So fingers crossed. But I guess I just want to be clear real quick on the road ahead. Even if there is a hearing for this, this is going to be a challenging road. Because for a number of reasons, no need to get into here specifically, but I'm going to venture to say that the other 287 school districts in the state of Washington are going to be super happy with Granite Falls and concrete specifically kind of being written into the bill, but that's their problem to figure out. That's my problem. So So that's the ask is that everybody reaches out. I've reached out to city council members. We've put stuff on Facebook. I sent an email, three or so emails today. Haven't heard any feedback back from anyone from the committee, but certainly throwing everything I have at this. So I want to play a quick video here. I got it. Oh, okay. This is a video that we were able to create, just really expressing the need for regionalization here. So go ahead.
This funding method is called regionalization. To simplify the numbers, the Arlington School District is funded at a $1.15 regionalization level. 18 minutes south, the Lake Stevens School District is funded at a $1.18 regionalization level. 11 minutes away, in the Marysville School District, they are funded at a $1.15 regionalization level. Travel 35 minutes east to the Sultan School District, and they are funded at a $1.18 regionalization level. The list goes on and on. Everett School District, $1.18 regionalization level. Monroe School District, $1.18 regionalization level. Snohomish School District, $1.18 regionalization level. Lakewood School District, $1.15 regionalization level. And that brings us to Granite Falls. Physically touching all of these districts and just minutes away from each, Granite Falls School District is only funded at a $1.12 regionalization level.
Our teachers do the very best that they can with what they have, but in neighboring districts, the ones that get more funding, they're able to offer better classes, different ones, and they're able to have more materials for kids to learn with and just do more cool things, where I buy my cooking equipment for my foods class from thrift stores.
I think we should be able to get the equal opportunity as other districts do, because we're all trying to do the same thing, and that's to educate children for a brighter future and better lives. And the fact that other districts get more and we get less is setting kids up for even more of a failure.
A lot of our staff is from Granite Falls or surrounding areas, and so we can't draw more people in because we can't pay them a decent amount. I've lived here almost my entire life. That's what drew me in, because I love it here. But if I wasn't from here, I don't know if I would be drawn in to want to work here.
My kids go here. They are valuable. They would be no more valuable in another district. But the state sees them as that way, and that's sad.
The fact that we're getting treated like we're less. We're just a school district trying to teach other students, and I mean, even if we live in a small town, we still deserve the same amount of money because we're trying to do the same things.
We're just leveling the playing field between Granite Falls and all these other districts. Our kids get to experience life just a little bit more.
It is not fair. It's not right. It's not moral. It's not ethical. It's not kind. It's so short-sighted. The places that need the most are getting the least. That doesn't make any sense to me. The places that have the most are getting the most. What kind of a society is that? That's not the way it's supposed to be.
So huge shout out to everyone that took time out for that video. So what's before the board tonight is a resolution essentially on Senate Bill to basically ensure that our voice is heard, that we are, as a board, are asking for the Senate report hearing to be completed on Senate Bill 5713. And with a unified voice that the regionalization that we are signed is not only in my mind incorrect, but unacceptable to the students and the families that we serve. So I'll pause there for if you have any questions.
I just wanted to let you know that I have it set up that your video is gonna go out at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. I did a little research and found that most people are more engaged in the morning, so it's going out tomorrow morning. And I've also joined a bunch of concrete pages too, to get those people on board as well.
Nice.
Just wanted to let you know that.
Did possible, so you mentioned also, right, reaching out. Is it possible for us to, maybe within the comments, or so, I guess, are you doing it from the community liaison page?
I do it from my own, I'm sharing it in every capacity I
So I'm
can.
just wondering if it's shared, if there's a way to just, I don't know if you like put in one comment and then turn it off or something, but just with like a template and
Over
contact
an email
information.
that they could send.
Yeah, basically just like copy email and send, right?
Yeah, potentially. We, when I was talking to Waz about the most effective way of like making our voice heard, she didn't think that like a kind of a copy paste is that great just because it's kind of easy, like in the day of bots. It's easy to make that seem like it's just fake people out there.
Yeah.
So she thought that, you know, kind of leaving people open-ended to kind of make it different. Oh gosh, this is a groundswell of like legitimate people asking for this. So I did contemplate that, but I'm not against it. We just don't have necessarily a lot of time to put something.
Either that, or I think like reaching out to, I think what a lot of people view as like this mythical, you know, this entity. I think at least having the email address and then really, and just like a few bullet points, like, you know, say that you're for it, or say that, you know, the extra money would really help because of X, Y, Z, and send it to this, you know, email address, something along those lines. Cause yeah, I could see how if like they get 200 of the exact same emails, they'll be like, their Granite Falls is making stuff up, but yeah.
Also, Carl, on the, when you click on the bill to go read it, there's like a spot where you can click on and it says comment whether you're for or against. Does that help?
It doesn't hurt, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Matter of fact, that's often how I'll weigh as a legislative rep will weigh in on bills and stuff like that. So yeah, that's actually a really great idea. So if you click on the Senate bill, there are places you could actually even comment on it, as Marshall was saying, as well as say whether you're pro or con. So yeah, that doesn't hurt. So I just want to read the resolution real quick before we take a motion on it. It says the resolution of the Board of Directors of Granite Falls School District number 332, Snohomish County, Granite Falls, Washington, which authorizes the superintendent and school board discuss matters associated with Senate Bill 5713 regarding regionalization factors for concrete Granite Falls School District. Whereas Senator Wagner has put forth Senate Bill 5713 before the 68th legislature in the 2023 regular session in the state of Washington. Whereas the Senate bills call for Granite Falls School District to be rebased in tertile 3, resulting in an increase in regionalization from 12 to 18%. Whereas the Granite Falls School Board of Directors identified the discrepancy between this district and neighboring districts in funding, and further identified the instructional and operational opportunities missed due to such discrepancies. And whereas said board has provided such information to legislator delegations since the inception of regionalization. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of Granite Falls School District number 332, Snohomish County, Washington, support the passage of Senate Bill 5713, adopted by the Board of Directors of the Granite Falls School District number 332, Snohomish County, Washington, at a regular meeting held this 8th day of February 2023. And as a board director in Granite Falls, I would like to make a motion that we approve resolution 2223-0.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
All right, we are at the consent agenda. Any discussion? The consent agenda includes the minutes, personnel report, the high cap annual report, All right, if there's no discussion, then
Passes by unanimous consent.
it passes by unanimous consent. Sorry, adjourn, or, yeah, 8A, we are now closing the meeting at 9:34 PM.